and taking time out of your day and this week to be here with us. We're glad you're here. I'm going to be your moderator today. My name is Holly Pendergrass. I'm with TDOT Aeronautics Division. I would like to take a moment to recognize any special guests in the audience. If you are an elected official, if you'd please stand. All right, and then Mr. Wayne Overman from the Tennessee Aeronautics Commission. We're glad you're here.
Good morning.
And then anyone from the Tennessee Aeronautics Association, we're thankful you're here as well. For some housekeeping items, there is a sign-in sheet at the back of the room if you have a chance to go ahead and sign in. And then the restrooms are out in the hall down the lobby. You'll see those signs. There will be refreshments and snacks at the first break, which is about 9:50. So if we can hold on until then, that'd be great. And the exits, of course, are at the back of the room as well. Mr. Chad, is there anything you'd like to say?
No, welcome. And breakfast burritos and some food.
Perfect, thank you. And this is our meeting agenda. It will be sprinkled in throughout the slideshow. If you'd like to take a picture of it now, you're welcome to. And I'm going to welcome up JP Solvector. He's the Director of Aeronautics.
All right, thanks so much, Holly. Thank you, everybody. Welcome. Really appreciate you giving your time and attention to be here today, make the effort to travel, kind of scan the room to see where everybody's coming from here. In case we haven't met, I see a lot of familiar faces, but if we haven't met, I'm JP Solvector, and I'm the Director of Aeronautics under the Tennessee Department of Transportation. I also want to echo some of the thank yous. Thank you to our host, airport and facility. Thank you to our TAC member Wayne Overman for being here, and again, just all of you for showing the attention and desire to learn a bit more and do better for your airports, your communities, your clients. So that means a lot to us. The purpose of these meetings really kind of started as preparation for the ACIP working sessions. So it was an opportunity for us to lay out some of our priorities, our changes to our programs, things to consider as you go into the summer season where we sit down, go through the ACIP, kind of come up with those updates. Over time, it's evolved to be a little bit broader. That's still the primary focus. So I want you to kind of keep that in the back of your mind as we go through all of the content today. But we want to cover more updates. So it's also that kind of big annual sort of touch point where we can give updates on various programs, initiatives, just changes happening in the industry. So we've got a really great lineup of speakers today. You saw the agenda. It will be a lot of information. So just I'll warn you ahead of time, but we've got some resources there in front of you that are reinforcing some of the key takeaways and resources available for, again, a lot of it's focused on the ACIP. So I'm going to be more kind of general and high level, maybe that 35,000 foot view, but just really cover a few key things, including priorities, programs, our people, of course, talk about funding. I know everybody's interested in that. Some goals and initiatives that we have going on, and just give you some insight on our kind of broader strategy that we have as the Aeronautics Division. Let's see where to aim this. It goes back, but not forward. Let's see. Okay. There we go. All right. So just as a refresher, I want to talk about the administrative functions of the division. So we've got really three core priorities for our administrative section. That includes aviation safety and compliance, airport system preservation and investments, and aviation promotion, workforce, and economic development. We pursue those priorities through the management of our programs and the funding that we receive. So we are part of the FAA's state block grant program. We're only one of 10 states in the nation under that program. And with that, we're responsible for distributing FAA funding to the NIPIAS airports in our system, which is 64 out of our 76 total airports. Along with that comes all the strings attached. So we have to ensure that federal regulations are followed and that airports comply with any federal grant assurances. We manage state aviation funding for both air carrier airports and general aviation airports. And we manage numerous programs that serve Tennesseans statewide. Okay, so for kind of an overview of our statewide programs, we cover a pretty broad scope with this. We look for opportunities to add value through improved effectiveness and cost efficiency. We also look for opportunities to champion initiatives that help to invest in the future workforce and strengthen the aviation industry in the state. So just touching on a few of these, we have our airport licensing program, which enforces the minimum standards set in the related state rule. We have our airport improvement program, or AIP, providing grants and aid for infrastructure maintenance and development. An asset management program, which leverages preventative measures for extending the useful life of critical assets like pavements. We also manage a network of 40 automated weather observing systems, or AWOS, as well as data counters across all publicly owned GA airports to enhance safety, reliability, and decision-making. Looking ahead, we embrace emerging technologies and education and outreach efforts, including the Tennessee Airport Professionals, or TAP Academy, and an aviation education grant program, equipping current practitioners and preparing the next generation of leaders, ensuring a strong future for Tennessee aviation. So out of those programs, I'd like to highlight some successes that we have that we're really proud of. The TAP Academy received the 2025 Maceo Award for Most Innovative Statewide Program. We were one of the first states to deploy traffic data counters across all general aviation airports, providing airports and TDOT with information that was once limited or even unknown. Under our asset management program, we've accomplished 31 million of preventative pavement maintenance at 64 airports since 2021. Which is separate from the rehab and reconstruction projects that we do under the airport improvement program. And we maximize every dollar by quickly distributing funding to airports, issuing 298 grants in FY25, totaling $191 million. So a lot of work that we're really proud of coming out of our office. So like any organization, the staff is absolutely critical. It's kind of the organs. You know, if our division is the body, it's the organs of the body. So we did go through a reorganization effort across the entire department. It was called EPIC, which stood for Empowering People, Influencing Culture. Part of that process was involved bringing in a third party to conduct analysis of what are our responsibilities, our roles, what should we focus on, what could we maybe outsource. Do we have adequate staffing to do all of that? So the outcome, again, kind of for our administrative side, we do have a flight operations side of the division as well. But for admin, it led to the structure and the positions that you see here. No, it's kind of tough to read, but we will have a version on our website as well. But this was the structure that we felt, and kind of everybody felt, the division, the department, and the third party as well, would provide the best level of service, meet the responsibilities and roles that we have. So I'll highlight some of the new positions and new staff that we have. We also redistributed some staff. So typically our kind of project management section, which is now project delivery, was the bigger kind of portion or team of the division. We've redistributed responsibilities as well as positions to have a little bit more balance across the division. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But so in terms of kind of new areas, new staff, we added a dedicated support position over here under the grants compliance and inspection team to handle federal programs. So that's IIJA funding, DBE, Title VI, all of this kind of ancillary federal programs that we have to administer on top of just the typical kind of project development aspects. We have a new drones and advanced air mobility team under Ryan Traversa. So we've really, we've got a lot of emerging technologies that are exciting. They're coming into the fold. We've got to prepare, be engaged in the industry, track advancements, and be prepared for the integration of those new technologies. So that's what they're focused on. And then we were able to add a statewide engineer and statewide maintenance, also an engineer position, or sorry, a senior transportation engineer position focused on standards, processes, and just broader kind of asset management. So we really needed some dedicated roles for that as well. So those are really kind of the new areas. And then we, again, kind of redistributed some positions so that we've got 6 positions in each of the 3 teams. You'll hear more from the upcoming presenters where they'll talk a little bit deeper about their staff and their roles and responsibilities. One thing I want to highlight, though, is you've probably heard us talk about a matrix team. So a matrix team is basically, one individual from each of the teams, grants compliance inspection, planning and environmental, and project delivery. Together, those 3 form a matrix team, and that's how our airport assignments are distributed kind of across those teams. And what it provides is it's a grouping, and instead of a single point of contact that you're having to go through for everything, we want to give you a team of experts, and we want to make sure that you have direct contact with the person that's most knowledgeable in the area that you're trying to get assistance with. That way, we kind of removing that middle person that's having to communicate back and forth. So we really think, again, kind of going back to responsibilities, how do we provide the highest level of service? We think this is the best model to do that. And we also have on our website, let's see, there we go. We have a link, and this will be updated. So it used to be just kind of a table that would show the people and the airports they were assigned. We're updating that to include a map and a better table organized by airport. We tend to think of it as, staff members. Okay, so-and-so, what airports do they have? We realize on your end, you want to see for your airport or for your, if you've got multiple airports that you're involved with, who do I need to contact and for what area? So creating some enhancements there to make it easier on your side of it. Just a couple more points on that. So it's going to be a transition. I know that it's changed and that can be hard in a lot of cases. So these are starting. Some have some handoffs have been completed already. Others are still in process. We're going to make sure there's a gradual handoff, where we need to have that, and that these transitions happen before the ACIP working sessions that are coming up. And a really important note, I know some projects, initiatives are high risk, high profile. We're going to keep staff. In those cases, we're going to keep staff on those projects, let them kind of close them out, sunset, and then move on. So you may have a period where you might be working, like let's say with the project delivery team, you might have multiple points of contact, and someone might maintain 1 or 2 projects they have going on. So again, with the effort of providing the highest level of service and least disruption as well. All right, so kind of shifting into funding advocacy work. We were really busy throughout kind of the winter and then going into the legislative session, trying to just communicate, we'll call it the gap between needs and resources. So we can divide that up. So in terms of needs, we look through the ACIP. The ACIP, we do know is influenced because it's often funding constrained. So projects get moved around a little bit. So we looked at that from the lens of a completely unconstrained budget and really about project timing. Could things happen in fiscal year 27? So when we went through that exercise, we came up with $127 million in total need. And that was across 3 categories. Maintaining our system, which we call a state of good repair, or you see SOGR here. Keeping our statewide programs going. So that's just kind of keeping the lights on and providing those services. And then on the top of that is really the capacity modernization enhancement project. So all in total, $127 million of need. If we look at just maintaining our system, keeping the lights on, it's 95 million. Then we go to the bottom, when we look at anticipated funding, we have recurring federal in the tune of about 18 million. That has been higher because of the IIJA funding, but that ended basically in FY26. So there's no more allocations from that coming to airports. So then on top of that, we have a recurring state amount for general aviation of 23.7 million. So we still have a gap there of 53.3 million just to maintain, and we would need 77 total state to maintain our system. So not including all the additional capacity enhancement projects that we want to do. So just kind of showing some of the numbers there. So that was our push. That was the message we really tried to communicate. We need 77 million total state just to maintain the system and have 95 million in funding. So the results of the session just concluded recently. So this breaks down the funding information kind of in two different ways. So the top is by source, the bottom just shows recurring versus non-recurring. Ultimately, air carriers had a windfall year with $150 million total in state funding. GA ended up receiving 31.9 million. That's 8.2 above the recurring amount. Unfortunately, there were two earmarks included that pulled from that additional 8.2 million. So only leaving about 3 million additional for our programs and programming. So the silver lining is that there is strong overall support for aviation from the state. To receive almost $182 million is a lot. That probably puts us in the top 5 when you compare states and state funding. So that's the bright side. The downside is general aviation may not be on parity with air carriers, especially when you look at the sheer number of airports and how that funding gets distributed. So, I think in order to get more funding, we're not really in a position where the division can go out and lobby. So, that's where I think a lot of you come into play. Your role, your communities, your networks. It's important that your elected officials are hearing about the needs that exist, the projects that you want to do, the benefit that your airport provides to your community. We were fortunately able to go and present in front of the Senate Transportation Committee, but that's only 9 members of one body of the General Assembly. And all in total, maybe 15 airports in their districts. So it's still a fraction of the system. So there's definitely strength in numbers if all of you can engage with your elected officials, both at the local level and at the state level, and just again let them know about the benefits and the needs at the airport. We're going to make sure that we're putting out information that help you do that. So the economic impact study, other resources, the ACIP is always great for that. So you'll hear more from future speakers on that. So I like to be really clear with staff and the industry about what our top goals are. What is our primary focus week after week? So it really boils down to, I think it's helpful to just do kind of top 3. Number 1 is resolving conditional airport licenses. We've had a lot of, pretty good majority of our system be on a conditional airport license year after year after year, and that's primarily obstructions. So we really need to address that. I think that's a big gap. You'll hear more about some efforts that we're doing there. Second is preserving our system through the execution of our plans. That we spend a lot of time on the ACIP, but we shouldn't just complete the exercise and put it on the shelf. We've got to follow through, bring in those projects. So once we finish programming and show our commitment of where we're able to put funding, then it's really on all of you make that happen at the local level, secure local share, bring in those requests. So I can't overemphasize the importance of executing the plan. Third is just we're focused on improving processes and maximizing the available funding. So we want to be easy to work with. We want to make sure that we're optimizing all the resources that we have available. So those are our goals. And I talked about some, kind of the big priority areas earlier. Just to hit on some initiatives tied to that, I've got a list here. I think I could even add some check marks of ones that we've really completed at this point. But I want to show you how those tie back to those broader priorities. So you're going to hear about a lot of this throughout the presentations today. Really excited about, just to highlight a few, FAA flight check agreement is in place. We had some resources go out on how to utilize that. We've got, let's see, the PCI surveys are done. We're just waiting for that data to kind of go through quality control and kind of get the summaries there. Zoning guidance and resources was just about ready to roll out. We did roll out the land lease rates and charges guidance, which we're really excited about. That's kind of a second phase of focus on rates and charges to make sure it's fair market value, that we're maximizing revenue that you can at the local level, and you can see several others there that we're everything on there we're working on, and then we're hopeful to check off as much of that as possible by the end of June. So that's really kind of initiatives for this state fiscal year. Lastly, before I hand it off to our next presenter, I just want to give some insight into the strategy that we're doing within the division. So I want to acknowledge some perceptions or concerns that I hear about added bureaucracy, processes. Seems like our role and oversight and everything keeps expanding, and to some degree that's been true. We've had to add responsibilities. A lot of that has been driven by the change in our memorandum of agreement under the state block grant program. So there were added responsibilities included with that. The FAA has had audits, and they're enforcing some of their standard operating procedures more. So there's more scrutiny, and we're really being held to all of the FAA guidance and orders and everything. So that's part of it. It's compliance related. And that is ultimately, it is better support for airports. The other piece to that is, statewide programs or statewide initiatives that we take on. And what I want to really communicate there is we only expand, or add on those things when we see a clear opportunity to add value. It kind of goes back to some of my comments earlier. When it's better instead of kind of doing one-off efforts at each airport, that we can take it on as a state, it benefits everybody equally. That's what we're looking for. Those are the opportunities we want to capitalize on. So, those things add consistency. They reduce cost overall. I kind of joke about the Costco pricing that we can get in some of those efforts, but it's true. When you have economies of scale, you do get better pricing, and it's just more efficient support. So please know that we're trying to be very intentional and strategic when we take something on. We don't, there's a lot of shiny things that we could chase after or do, but we try to be very strategic in that. Some of those initiatives are meant to be temporary. We don't want to have to maintain that level of effort and those responsibilities forever. So like conditional licenses, there's some things that we're doing to help get those cleared, but it's not a long-term plan. We want to clean the slate and then be able to equip all of you with the resources and things that you need to be successful long-term. So we are going to, some things do require a little bit more investment on the front end, and then we can scale back and eventually sunset. But lastly, I just want, my goal is that all of you understand our strategy and have confidence in that in what we're doing, there are long-term benefits to aviation, to the system as a whole. We try to keep a system mindset and approach to it. And ultimately, we just want a safer, more consistent system and better outcomes for the whole industry. So that's what's driving us every day. But So probably enough from me. Hopefully I didn't go too much over on my time, but with that, I'll hand it off. And we'll have opportunity for questions. I'm sure Holly will mention this too, but just again, thank you all for your time and attention today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, JP. I'd like to now welcome up Ryan Traversa, who is the team lead over drones and AAM.
Hey, good morning, everybody. So my name is Ryan Traversa. I am currently the team lead for drones and advanced air mobility. Today, I wanted to go over obstruction clearing as the first thing. As you can see by this image, if anybody in this room is an aviation enthusiast, they probably realize this image isn't exactly correct. If it's not correct, I will tell you why. It's AI produced. Hopefully you do not know many airports that look like this, but I want to really emphasize the importance of obstructions being out of your runway approach. So ideally, if any of you saw this at an airport, I would imagine most of you would not want to depart or land there. So the idea is, hey, we need to do something about this. So what happens currently is the team under John Briggs, Grant Management Compliance and Inspection, will go out and do a line of sight obstruction analysis. So they sit there, they try to target a tree, the one that seems most prominent or most likely to be an obstruction. They'll ping it, and then they'll sit there and say, hey, you either have a 20-to-1, 34-to-1, et cetera, et cetera. If it is a 20-to-1 obstruction, they will notify my team, and my team will go out there. Lo and behold, there's another beautiful AI created image. We send a drone out there and we fly your approaches. And the reason why we do this is because we have software that allows us to immediately identify 20-to-1 obstructions. Let me rephrase that. Within 24 hours, 48 hours, you should have a full-blown report that showcases whether you have a 20-to-1 or not. This will help you identify every single obstruction that needs to be removed or lighted. So once I have made that determination, or my team has made that determination, we send that report over to your project managers and Christopher. So Christopher Starr's team will utilize his on-call to mitigate these obstructions. His on-call has successfully negotiated and secured multiple rights to obstructions and has executed the removal process on multiple occasions already. Christopher's obstruction removal program is currently temporary. Please take note of this. That means it is not going to be permanent. Bill will probably cry if it was permanent. So Bill, this is for you. So that being said, ultimately, it is the airport's responsibility to ensure that their approaches are cleared after Christopher's entire situation is done. So please keep that in mind. That again, this is temporary. As you guys noticed, this is the third produced AI image, and I don't know why, but it made it sunny. I guess apparently if you don't have obstructions, it's sunny every day. So that being said, this is what you want your approaches to look like. Obviously, the numbers would be, fixed, et cetera, but the idea is we don't want trees. There are currently 4 airports that no longer are on conditional licenses due to the successful operations of the TDOT Aeronautics team. Those airports are Columbia, Dixon, Gainesboro, and Jamestown. Next up, my team will be flying all airports the next 3 years due to the contract that we have with GNext. Moving forward with the licensing process, Grant Management Compliance team will still continue the line of sight method, but my team will still be flying the approaches just because we have 3-year contract. If obstructions are identified via drone data collection, that does not necessarily mean you will have a conditional that year. If you already received your license, so let's say yesterday, Ryan Healy's team goes out there, pings your airport, and gives you a regular license, and I come out there and fly 2 days later and say, oh, you have obstructions. You will be good to operate on a regular license for that year until the next inspection season, and then you will be given a conditional license. So please take note, that does not mean don't do anything for a year. That means Christopher Starr's team will be notified. He will continue through the process of ensuring that an obstruction is cleared for next year. Next, I'm going over the crack algorithm. The past 2 years, we've been developing a crack learning algorithm with University of Tennessee, Knoxville. We have officially executed phase 3, which is hopefully going to be the final year, which then we will have a finalized product. The items that we need to address, I will go over that. The reason why we've been doing this is to produce more accurate numbers for quantities. We want to reduce the temporary closure time for quantity count, provide a secondary source of data to provide better information for APMM to give our office a clearer picture of system needs. And I'm going to go over how it works. So what is going to happen is we fly the drone. We're going to sit there and collect the data. Then I am going to have my team go and trace those cracks on their computers all the way down to the pixel level. So one image is approximately 25 million pixels, and they're going to be scrolling down and getting into the exact pixel. So they actually geek out when they get to use the 3-pixel brush instead of the 1-pixel brush, because it triples their work output. So that shows you how tedious and how miserable this is. So shout out to my team. They're back there. They do not complain at all. So yeah, great job, team. Keep it up. So what's going to happen is it's going to define 3 different types of crack. Crack 1 is 1/8 to 1 inch. Crack 2 is 1 inch to 1.5 inch. And then crack 3 is 1.5 to 3.5 inches. What we need to do on phase 3 is expand the training data set to cover up to 20 airports. Fun fact, we're actually going to be flying Murfreesboro after this to get additional data. So Chad, if you didn't know that, surprise, we're coming. We're going to enhance the crack classification model, i.e. more training, more tracing, more input. So that way the algorithm can learn. We're going to develop a maintenance prioritization system that integrates with TDOT's PCI heuristic model. We're also going to build a standalone desktop executable. So therefore no cloud server is required. That means if you want this software, we will give it to you and you can just install it into your desktop. You can fly your own drone, your consultant can fly your drone, and then you can feed into your system and you will have a better understanding of which airport condition is. Due to the software GNX that we recently procured, we've made substantial progress in providing data sets that are needed to help the algorithm grow. Why I mention this is because I think phase 3, we will be done. We will have a finalized product, and currently the final date is going to be February of 2027. If there is going to be a phase 4, you will hear from me more next year at Garm. So now we're going to go into advanced air mobility, and I wanted to show this video really fast.
In Tennessee, we're embracing cutting-edge technology to transform how we manage transportation infrastructure. And at TDOT, drones are at the heart of that innovation. From inspecting bridges and monitoring construction projects, drones are helping us work smarter and safer and more efficiently. These aren't just gadgets, they're powerful tools. They give us high-resolution imagery, 3D models, real-time data, all while keeping our crews and the public safer. With new drones across the state, TDOT's Aeronautics Division is proof that Tennessee is ready for what's next. We're not just keeping up, we're setting the pace for innovation in transportation. The future is here, and Tennessee is leading the way.
So I wanted to showcase that to everyone so that way you could kind of have a better understanding of the political perception of drones and advanced air mobility as a whole. Governor Lee came out, showed support. He's actually encouraged us to adopt it into the DOT. I would imagine he's doing it the same throughout the other governmental agencies. I spoke to Tennessee Highway Patrol, the governor's personal security, and they were actually looking to procure a drone as well. The point is you can kind of see of where the governor sits at this. And also when it comes to advanced air mobility, I wanted to mention this one, which was also a federal funding opportunity that we applied for. I was able to secure 2 letters of support, one from Senator Blackburn and one from Senator Haggerty. I only put up Senator Blackburn's up here because I think everyone in this room knows she's running for governor. So if she gets elected, you're looking at another 4 years of people that are going to be supporting the integration of drones and advanced air mobility. This right here is another video that I wanted to play for you all. This is actually occurring in England. And what happened in this video is there was a drone sighted by an incoming aircraft that was going to land at Gatwick, England. So as you can see, all of the blue lines that are depicted were currently on the normal route. They were supposed to be going in there. They were supposed to be landing, or as you can see, some are just passing. All of the ones that are orange lines currently are aircraft that have been impacted just by one drone sighting within the approach. There were even some aircraft that actually diverted completely just because they were unsure if how long they're going to be in hold patterns, how many aircraft were in that hold pattern, and they had to make a quick determination. As many of you know, you're probably aviators, and you know how stressful it can be because you're supposed to go fly with as little fuel as you can, so you don't sit there driving in a car where you can break down on a highway. You're okay. So you have to make these decisions, and you have to make them quickly. So as you guys could possibly imagine, this is not a general aviation airport, but still, you can see the frustration and the amount of money that is lost just from one drone sighting. So it shows these technologies are occurring. It shows that these technologies need to have a solution, something to address it, something that says, hey, we are prepared for this. For the sake of time, I'm going to fast forward. So on December 17th of 2025, the FAA released their 10-year vision, the Advanced Air Mobility National Strategy, a bold policy vision for 2026 to 2036. This initiative was initially started by the Biden administration and executed by the Trump administration. The only reason why I mention that is because it is a bipartisan effort, which now means it's not going away whoever gets elected. So you have to keep that in mind, that this is the future of aviation and it is coming. This document displayed the plan to integrate new aerial technologies into national airspace. This was one of the images that they have from that exact document. As you can see here, there's multiple different use cases that the federal government is foreseeing to be occurring in the future. One is access to national airports, regional air mobility, skilled aviation workforce, military transportation, air taxi, cargo operations, emergency response, and travel over difficult terrain. Currently in advanced air mobility, there are several different aircraft that are going through the certification process. President Trump announced that the Archer aircraft is going to be the official advanced air mobility aircraft for the 2028 Olympics, meaning that this is getting a lot of leverage and support. It is also something that is commonly asked about in multi-state collaboratives that I'm a part of. There's also multiple drone commercial delivery companies that are occurring in several other states. Be forewarned. It is coming to Tennessee, and it's coming sooner than you think. So keep that in mind. As general aviation, this could have a direct impact on you. So make sure you are very familiar with what's happening in the nation and how this can impact your community. So part of that 10-year plan kind of showcased to us, the DOT, that, hey, we need to have our 10-year plan too. So right now we've been working on it, and the current step that we are in right now is an advanced air mobility economic impact study. We completed our statewide evaluation, and this is our next step. What it is a report that evaluates and forecasts how emerging aircraft technologies like drones and air taxis will affect a region's economy, jobs, infrastructure, and transportation system. There are multiple reasons why we're doing this. First up is state-specific guidance for airport. There have been several other states that have already done their economic impact study. However, every other state is not Tennessee. Every other state has their initiatives, their agenda that they want to fulfill. And I wanted my own report that is unbiased, that showcases how this can benefit Tennessee, because we know what's happening in Tennessee. We know what Tennesseans need to hear. Where is the demand for these technologies? I could easily selfishly ask JP to take an electric charging station out at Real Foot Airport. It's not a good idea. And that also applies to general aviation airports as well. We need to know where is the right places for this, if it is even the right place. We also need to know, is it really going to be electric aircraft, or is it going to be some other fuel? Something that we need to investigate and something that we need to understand. This also puts us aligned with the US DOT AAM strategic plan. They have openly expressed interest of integrating existing infrastructure, i.e. general aviation airports, to be supportive of these technologies. So we need to make sure that we are putting these charging stations or whatever technologies are coming out in the right places, and making sure we have a valid reason for doing so and have a clear understanding of how this will impact your communities. What economic impact that this could bring? Pursue federal funding, public-private partnerships, and political buy-in. We need to understand, is this something that you want to pursue? A lot of people are going to sit there and say, hey, we want Joby or we want Archer, but there's a lot more that goes into aircrafts. The Boeing 787 MAX is an aircraft that is actually multiple different areas that it's constructed. They build the wings in Japan and they ship it over to Washington and they construct it there. So the point that I'm trying to make is there are several different pieces that go into these aircrafts, and maybe you might want to be a part of that. So maybe batteries, something along those lines, and bring it into your community. And it helps you understand the bigger picture. Support for airport decision makers. This is going to be a concrete report to take to your governing body. There's nothing worse than somebody saying, hey, you need to invest in this. And when you ask them why, they say, trust me. That's not going to fly, and it's not going to fly in politics. So you have to sit there and you have to have concrete reports if you want to pursue something, so you can take it to your city council, your mayors, and showcase, hey, this is what I want. I need local funding for this. Here's this report. And there's going to be another report that I'm going to be developing later that is going to be covered in this PowerPoint. And this will really showcase that you know what you're doing, you've done your research, and you know it's right for you. Decide if airports, communities want to compete. There is going to be a potential for good paying jobs. What that potential is, I don't know. And that's what this economic impact study is going to cover. It will showcase whether this is right for you or whatnot. Improve stakeholder engagement, a data-driven report that addresses benefit, costs, risks, and opportunities. You need to make sure that the companies that you're trying to entice to come to your community showcase to them that you are prepared, you understand, you've already briefed your city council, you briefed your mayor, you discussed with the DOT, you know what this future is and what you want. That is going to really show to your companies, hey, I know what I'm doing, believe in us. Risk reduction for early adoption. This will allow airports to be proactive versus reactive. Build a clear roadmap for integration. Develop plans early to minimize financial and operational risks. Finally, enhance safety and emergency response planning. This study will identify regions where drones and AAM could improve disaster response, medical transport, utility inspections, and rural access. Next up, the other piece that I'm working on is the AAM zoning guidance. This document is intended to prepare local communities for drone and AAM adoption. It provides local communities with a resource to develop zoning that will create groundwork for integration of technologies. It addresses land use compatibility and safety, helps communities understand the land use, safety, noise, and infrastructure requirements associated with these emerging technologies. This will also be another foundational piece to develop a clear pathway forward. This document will give communities confidence and make timely and informed decisions to address the possibility of integration. It will also allow you to do public outreach, make your communities aware of what you're trying to do, make communities aware of what is coming, what you are looking to integrate. And these are going to be two foundational pieces that, again, you will take to your city council and showcase, hey, I know what I'm doing. I know what is coming with this, the problems that are going to arise, and we already have this addressed. As you all know, JP has also been eager to get zoning for all general aviation airports. So this is also something that we need to get done, so that way you guys are not having to showcase two different zoning ordinances or one and then immediately having to amend it for, this. So please keep that in mind. And I hope to have those complete in the near future. Time frame is uncertain right now as TDOT is going through the procurement process for some things that we need to execute these. This right here is my team. Many of you from Middle Tennessee should know Jake Bennett. He was a transportation program monitor from Grant Management Compliance. He transitioned over to me probably about 6 months ago. I'm looking at him, but all I see is Dean's face. So 6 months, let's go with that. JD is currently going through his finals at MTSU. He's a current contract employee. I am going to be posting a second position, which JP showcased on his org chart. I'm not saying I'm hiring JD, but if he graduates, I hope he applies. So that being said, I'm not allowed to answer any questions right now. So I'm going to hand it back over to Holly, and please let me know if you have questions on break time or whenever questions are accepted. Thank you.
It's compliance and inspections.
Thank you. Like Holly said, I'm John Briggs, the TDOT manager over grants, compliance, and inspection. Everyone's favorite part of aviation. I know you're all excited to hear what I have to say. So I'm going to talk about go over GCI's staff. Talk about expiring EP. That's the main topic. Again, this year you'll see some familiar slides. Some changes in project closeout, IJA funding, and put some pitches out for TAP Academy and the Naseo Airport Partner Program. So grants, compliance, inspection are fully staffed. Pictures are on the screen. Brian Fetters is the team lead. Ryan Healy is a statewide technical specialist. Matt Burns, Evan Rogers, and Oliver Ruff are all senior technical specialists. And Oliver is the for the other org chart, the guy on the side who handles the like DBE, Title VI, IIJA, and some other technical aspects, special projects and whatnot. And then Luke Powell, Kevin Morris, and Daniel Mullins are all technical specialists. And those folks are the people on the matrix team for your airport. So non-primary entitlements, hopefully a lot of this is familiar to you and it's not news. If you've been to Garms in the last several years, you've seen these slides before. Your MP is good for 4 years. After that, it expires and we can't use it anymore. So your 2022 MP is expiring this summer. If you don't spend it, it goes away. If we requested your 2023 MPE, it's going to expire next summer. The key thing is it has to be spent. And so everyone knows what spent is we have given it to you on a grant. You have invoiced us and we have paid you. We have invoiced the FAA and they've reimbursed us. That is spent. Spent is it's not on a grant and we plan on spending it. Spent means you've been reimbursed by TDOT and we've been reimbursed by the FAA so that our grant with the FAA is spent. Does that make sense? Spent. It's good for 4 years. It takes time for us to get our grant to you and it takes time for you to execute that project and spend that money. So we can't go into the 9th hour or I guess maybe midnight, we're about to turn into a pumpkin and then come up with an idea to spend it. It's too late at that point. Another visual. Ideally, we want to request your MPE the year you have use for it. So we want, if we requested your 2026 funding, we want to grant that to you soon after we get our grant. Then you've got the full period of performance of the grant, the 4 years to spend it. All right, so that's the ideal situation. We understand stuff happens. You fully intend to do the project. We get a new mayor, you had a flood, a tornado, whatnot. All of a sudden, the project can't move forward and you have to wait. That's going to happen. We know that, but we want to try, JP says, stick to the plan as closely as possible. So we have the most time to use the MPE as possible. So once your MPE turns 4 years old, so the situation might be, we requested your MPE, you fully intend to do the project, but for whatever reason, it's not gonna be able to come about. So instead of doing it, I guess I should do it up here, in 26, we have to push it over to 27. And 2027 rolls around, you're like, still not ready, thought we were, not there yet. And then we're going into 2028. And I'm starting to get nervous because we got to spend this money. If we still haven't got it to you on a grant yet, and we're in year 3, and I'm getting worried we're not gonna be able to spend this money. We don't want to be in the situation where we give you a grant of your MPE and it expires. And then if our grant with the FAA has expired and you invoice us against that, we're going to say, sorry, airport's going to have to eat that. That money's gone. We want to avoid that situation. So we don't want to give you a grant that's going to expire after our grant with FAA expires, if that makes sense. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. We also may give you your MPE on a grant and the project stalled for whatever reason. You're like, hey, we need an amendment. We need more time to do this project. Well, if your MPE is expiring, we can't give you an amendment beyond what our grant with FAA is, if that makes sense. So we're going to say, sorry, we can only give you an amendment up to the end of our grant, and that's it. So that may be a month, that may be 2 months, or whatever. But we have to have it spent before that 4 years is up. So, to fix my slide. Typically, historically, what we would do is we would request everyone's MPE every year. So every year that you got your 150, the most you could possibly accumulate would be $600,000. But the problem with that is this money has to be spent right away. But it's 4 years old, right? When you get, so it's really hard to save up $600,000 because you're running the risk of losing this 4-year-old money if you can't spend it really fast. So we don't have to request your MP every year. We can let the FAA hold it. So you may have enough MP on hand that you can do the environmental design of a project. And then say in this FY year 4 down here, we don't need to request your MP. You're not going to have a project that year. You had enough on hand to do this design project. The next year we'll request 300,000. So that's 2 years of MPE. And that 300,000 will be good for 4 years. When you're actually going to do the construction phase, you're going to spend the money. So we're timing when we ask for it for when you're going to use it. So you have as much time as possible to spend it, if that makes sense. The FAA can hold it for up to 3 years. So $450,000. After that, they have to grant it. They have what's called a period of availability that Congress says you have to award this money within 3 years or we're taking it back. Basically saying you don't need it if you haven't awarded it yet. Once they give it to us, we have a period of performance of 4 years to spend it all, or else the FAA is going to take it back. So timing of when we ask for the money, they make sure we have as long as possible to use it. So if you know you're not going to be able to have a project this year and you don't need it, we don't want to request it. And that mechanism of you communicating that is the ACIP. If you have on the ACIP, you have a project this year that you need your MPE for, we're going to request it from the ADO. Don't ask for it just to be asking for it. If you know you're really not going to be able to do a project, but we want to get our MPE because we're putting it on the clock. If we can let the FAA hold it, if you legitimately don't have a project and you know you're not going to have a project, we can let the FAA hold it so it doesn't go on the clock, and that gives us a longer amount of time to spend it, if that makes sense. We need your help and planning for that on your ACIP of thinking, when can we really do this project? Not just asking for it because, oh, it'd be nice if we could, and we don't really have any plans, but we'd like to do that project, so let's ask for it. And then 3 years later, we still haven't done the project, and that money's about to expire, and we're starting to stress on what we're going to do because we don't want to give that money back to the FAA. Because once we give it back, it's probably not coming back to Tennessee. It's going to go part of a discretionary grant for some other state. So another graphic to think about, we get our grant from the FAA and it's good for 4 years. And underneath that grant, we've got all of your MPE that we've requested for that year. We're making all these subawards, different timeframes being on when each airport asks for their project. So all these different timelines for all these different awards under that one grant. But we can't go past the end date of our grant with subawards we make to you. If that makes sense? So if you come in year 3, you're like, hey, we need 3 years to do this project. If you're using an MPE that's already 3 years old, we got a problem because it's not good for that long. It's only going to be good for 2 years. So we're going to set our grant to you to end that 2 years from our grant ends because we don't want to give you money you can't spend on a grant, if that makes sense. I guess I don't want to ask any questions yet. I got in trouble last time. I went over. But we all have to work together on this. It's never going to be a perfect scenario where it goes exactly as planned, but if we can stick to the plan as much as possible, it's going to help us have the longest amount of time to use our federal funds and take most advantage of it. There's some changes to the grant closeout process. Some of that will be moving to the GCI staff instead of the project delivery staff. And it's basically getting the documents that are required by the FAA for federal projects. And we're closing out the project financially and documentation wise, and we can collect the documents we're supposed to have on file for the period of time we're supposed to have them for. Usually it's 3 years, unless it's a land project. I'm going to try to utilize some tools in Black Cat. Similar to how when you're applying for a grant, you have to have an application, you have to have a 5100 or it won't let you submit. We're going to try to have the same type maybe things in Black Cat of you have to have the required documentation submitted before you can request to close the grant. More to come on that. Remember your IIJ funds, same thing as MPE, right? You've only got a certain amount of time to request them, and then you've got 4 years to spend it. So 2023, 2022's already expired. Did a pretty good job on that. We had very little that didn't get used. 2023 funding expires this summer. You run out of time to get it on a project if you haven't already. But every year for the next 4 years, money's going to be expiring if we haven't requested from the FAA and got it on a grant. So figure that into your ACIP planning process, any AIG funds you might have available that you can use for projects, and request it before it expires. And this month, you need to have your project request in if you have 2023 funding. And important to note, all the money is available now. So you can take all 4 years and put it on one big project instead of smaller projects. We would prefer that. It's less admin if we get it all on one grant instead of several grants that's more to administer. But just take that into account when you're planning your ACIP and when you can do projects and how you want to fund them. Plug for TAP Academy. We've had, including the pilot one, we've had 3 TAP Academies now. A lot of you in here, I think, have been to them. Appreciate that. Recommend it to people. If you have been working with airports a long time, you need to come to TAP Academy. If you're new to airports, you need to come to TAP Academy. It's not really as much, I don't think, the information that we're putting out, although I'm sure that helps some people. It's the interaction amongst the people in the room and the different experience levels that brings a lot of value to the program. If you're, especially for a newer airport manager, you've got a problem you're trying to solve, there can be a lot of experience in the room that can help you come up with solutions to that problem. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It helps you with all kind of the ideas. We're all kind of a level playing field of knowledge about how we interact and how we can best help each other. Also, the sales affiliate airport partner program, TDOT will pay the fee if you want your airport registered for that. We just need to know, we'll be sending an email out about it, but we just need to know who you want to have accounts from your airport. Each airport gets up to, for GA airports, you can have 5 logins. We also need to know what email addresses do you want us to use for accounts? And we'll send a spreadsheet out for that. As long as you send that back to us, we'll register you for the program. And I've heard from airports that participated, the training is very good. It helps keep airports in the know politically about things going on in Congress that may affect them. So encourage that. No questions. All right, turn it over to Holly before we go to a break. Thank you.
Yes, if anyone does have any questions for Mr. Briggs or Ryan Traversa or JP, we'll have some time for that if anyone has any questions.
Mr. Briggs, the survey, the drum survey deals with structures. We talked about it 20 to 1. If the airport was considering an extension of their runway, could we come to you and say, what would be an obstruction if we extend this 600 feet? Can we do studies kind of for the future based on that?
We kind of have limited on what cases you might evaluation cases we can do. So we want to be careful about just doing some what ifs because we're spending money we might need elsewhere.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of a study that would need to be done even before that because you need to know the end of the future runway, the location and elevation. That's going to impact what you're analyzing. So we, like what Ryan's team is doing, we have the capability of gathering the data for a huge area. Basically every tree, every canopy. The unknown would be what are we analyzing it against? So really that's kind of I think it's better served if there's a preliminary study that looks at the length, the elevation, all the specifics, even from like a constructability standpoint, that may adjust those two things. So there's some engineering work that I think probably needs to happen beforehand. The AOP update, I don't know if it lists. Let's look at the planning teams. I don't know if it lists the future elevation. It may just show it from just kind of a 2D perspective. Okay. Yeah, so that can, you may look at your ALP, if it shows an extension and it shows the future elevation, then we've got enough to work off of. But does that help? A little bit more complicated. Yeah.
To answer from my perspective, the answer is yes, we can. Only awkward situation is if there's like a giant jungle out there and I have to make Jake go stand out in the jungle, that's going to be a problem. But in theory, we do have additional processes. And ultimately what happens is whenever we collect that data, you can create as many surfaces as you want off of that data. So the processing, just strictly the data input. The surfaces you want from there, we can produce that whatever you want it to be. So just for fun, you want a 10-to-1, we got you. But the idea is the data collection is really going to be based off of what Jake and JD collects. So JP would need to come to me, or yeah, I think JP would probably be the right one to come to me saying, hey, I want you to collect 10,000 feet, out there. And then I would break the horrible news to Jake and he'd figure it out.
Hello. So kind of a two-parter, I guess, this kind of associates to Ryan's question or comment, as well as a question that technically back to Ryan. In theory, if you already know that you have your runway extension that's proposed, it's on the ALP, it's something that's working through, it's not essentially just, it's been a plan basically. Like JP was specifying as well, and also Traversa, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, kind of the thought process is maybe you don't have that runway end elevation yet. In theory, you could figure out how much tree obstructions would be present or not present based on a proposed runway end elevation that you're trying to shoot for. So that could be a possibility since, if I'm not mistaken, Ryan, there's not a, after you actually have covered the area with the drone itself, in terms of redoing the actual surface itself, you can do that multiple times. He's shaking his head yes. So in theory, if you don't know the runway elevation end, you can create a proposed and then try to figure out what do you really need to hit target wise to eliminate as much trees as possible, or property acquisitions or zoning or what have you. So just kind of a random thought connecting them two together.
Somewhat in conjunction with Tech Academy, John, does TDOT Aeronautics plan to still support the airport management guide? I've had a couple of airports that I've spoken with looking for information inside that guide, but that I knew was contained in that guide, and I directed them to the TDOT Aeronautics website, only to find out that it was not there. It is still hosted by your server and domain, and I was able to find it, but it's not listed as a publication.
Yeah, we probably need to update it. I think 2018 is the last time we did that.
September 2020 is what it showed.
Okay. Looking at you all. We'll try to get that updated and reposted. Thanks for pointing that out. It's meant to be a resource for airport managers. It's a little dated at this point, but we'll try to get that updated and back on the website. Thanks.
Any other questions? All righty, we'll go into our break time. I'm not sure where Mr. Gerke stepped away to, but there will be refreshments and snacks momentarily. We will come back. Oh, he gave me a thumbs up. I believe it's out there in the hallway. We'll come back at about 10. Do you have any instructions? Do you have any instructions?
Food is in the kitchen.
Perfect. All right, we'll go on break now. Thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. If everyone wants to grab a seat, please. All right, I'd like to welcome up Salil Rai and Dean Selby. They'll be giving a presentation for the Tennessee Aeronautics Association.
Presentation. So I think I know about everybody in this room, but I'm Dean Selby. I'm the director of the Upper Cumberland Regional Airport. I'm also volunteer with the Tennessee Aviation Association. We're all volunteers in there. So, and just from airports across the state and different groups. But I'm the vice president of TAA. Most of you know that with TAA that we are, the airport conference. We do the airport conferences. Do we have the presentation on?
Yes, sir.
And that's what kind of everybody thinks of it as. You're the people who put on the conferences. But we do a lot more than that. So for the last year, we've been spending a lot of time doing a legislative outreach and trying to talk to senators, the representatives, both state and federal, and try to talk about the airports across the state of Tennessee, particularly GA, but commercial service also, and how that they're affecting the state, the economic impact of them, and why we need the support of the federal and state government funding to continue to operate and to prosper as we have in years past. The conference last year we talked about the economic impact of airports, and that's kind of what we focused on this year. And we're not sure what the reaching theme will be, but we'll be figuring that out shortly.
So we just wanted to show you all some pictures. I think most of you were at the conference. I do want to introduce myself. My name is Salil Rai. I'm the current treasurer of the Tennessee Aviation Association and past president. And we wanted to talk to you all about a few things that Dean had mentioned. The two basics of what TAA does. One is on the education out front, and the other one is advocacy, and we're going to touch on that a little bit more. But on the education side, of course, we host the Tennessee Airports Conference each year. Last year, or this year, 2026, we had a great time in Murfreesboro at the Embassy Suites. I think most of y'all, if you were there, you would remember we had our keynote speaker, Scott Intake. He's a past Blue Angel pilot, and he did a fantastic job of entertaining us to get the conference going. And there's some pictures if we can. And of course, TAA also gives, again, it's because of all of you and the sponsors and the registrants at the conference that we're able to do a $5,000 aviation scholarship award. The 2024 and the 2025 scholarship recipients are there on the picture. And it makes a great difference in their lives and their education and what they're planning to do. And both of these were flight instructors and doing tremendous things in the state of Tennessee. And that's the 2026 recipient out of West Tennessee, if I remember correctly, and is a pro pilot student as well, going to MTSU, and again, investing in the future of aviation in Tennessee. And that's what we proudly do at TAA. And of course, we had some fun, right? We always want to have some fun. We've done casino night. This past year in 2026, we did Garm night. So it was a 70s theme. And again, as Dean mentioned, we haven't decided the theme for the 2027 conference, but we're certainly going to have some fun and glamour to it. But there's Chad right there, and some really nice dressed out people in that room. So we had a great time. And one thing we definitely wanted to mention was save the date for 2027 Tennessee Airports Conference. Plug that in your calendars. We'll certainly be sending out a mailer that you may have seen before, and emails and those types of things. But March 22 to 24 back here at the Embassy Suites in Murfreesboro. So we're starting to do our planning, and certainly require any help and assistance that we can get from the state aviation professionals to help us do the conference. It takes a lot to put the conference up. So. And we also do some social events throughout the year. We try to get our membership together. Just want to have a good evening or a good morning with certain things. This past year, we did a TAA Fall Social event in Knoxville, which was in East Tennessee. We're planning to plan something for West Tennessee. We've done lots of things in Middle Tennessee in the past, but this was a soccer match we attended. It was great fun, and a bunch of our members came out, so it was very good and beautiful day for some soccer. And like I said, we're planning a TAA summer event. Summer's coming, it's already here and it's going to go by pretty quickly. So we're proposing a location in West Tennessee, Jackson, and probably have some sort of an amphitheater concert type of a venue that we can go and attend as TA members and network there and have some fun. So this is what we're all about. TA mission, there's two, as I mentioned, is advocacy and education and fellowship. We touched a little bit on the education and fellowship. I'll let Dean talk a little bit more on the future slides on the advocacy front. But we also, on the education and fellowship, I also want to point out that we do quarterly working group sessions with the Tennessee Aeronautics staff. And, shout out to each and every one of you, JP, you and your staff, and we appreciate your support and the willingness to have open discussions. I think we've done that in the last few years, and it's tremendous to be able to sit down in the room and talk policy or talk funding or talk what's working with the airports, what's working for the airports, and what is not working for the airports. So this is where we need your support as airports and consultants to know what's working, what's not working, because we can take that and work with TDOT and make sure we're doing the right thing. So we do that every quarterly, and it has been a fantastic partnership there. Dean, I'll let you cover a few slides here.
So in March, Chad Gerke and I were invited up to the Hill to go speak to the Tennessee Transportation Committee, the House Transportation Committee, where we presented the case for both the general aviation and the commercial service airports in the state and what they do, but primarily general aviation, what they do, what their economic impacts are, and how that relates to state funding. One thing that I have learned personally from working on TAA that I didn't realize is airports. When I'm in an airport, I'm often there just looking at our thing. I'm questioning, why does JP and TDOT do this? Why is the state doing this? I have learned a lot more about how that ties back into the legislature and how they're constrained by a lot of things that they do, both state and federally, that I did not realize just strictly from an airport standpoint. So what we were doing up there with the equity fund was we are talking about the equity fund in particular. Now that we've lost the equity fund, we need to find another source of revenue for the state side of the funding. And the challenge is the $23.7 million recurring that the TDOT gets to go back to the airports. When you break that out over as many airports as there are, and their overhead and the compliance issues that TDOT is mandated to handle, there's just not enough there to maintain even a state of good repair. As JP mentioned on his slides, for the state, we worked pretty close with JP, and Karen spent a lot of time working with JP and Salil and John Briggs and Christopher Starr, talking about what do we really need to do this, to put this together for the funding for the state. What do we really need? And the number came up to 77 million. Wayne Oberman was a huge help in trying to get these numbers together and really figure this out and put together a plan of where we need to be with the state. So we presented that to the House Transportation Committee and said, let's take a needs-based approach. And let's look at what we need just to maintain the state of good repair, plus what will we need to grow the system. And by being able to talk to these people, what I found was interesting was that they were not as connected to airports as I would have thought they would have been. They did not realize the economic impact of general aviation. They spend so much time focused on the commercial service stuff and the impact that BNA has, which is tremendous. None of us in this room will question what BNA, Tyson, and Chattanooga do for the states. It is tremendous. But the general aviation airports also provide a tremendous impact to the rural Tennessee, which is the majority of the state. And if you look at what we all do and how much time we spend attracting business, dealing with the different groups that are coming through our state, they're not coming to Nashville when they're looking to relocate into rural Tennessee. They're coming to our airports. And I think that's one thing that we tried to effectively communicate to them, was that the importance of that to keep this economic engine of the state moving. And that was one of the things that Governor Lee, when he took office, he talked about that one of his primary focuses was building up rural Tennessee. It has worked. And in the presentation, I said, it has worked. You built up rural Tennessee, but now you've not stood behind us because we've been a big part of that. Now we need your help in moving forward. And I think that message got through, and I hope that next year we will see some impact of that. And I really want tell Chad if he's in the room or whatever, that I appreciate the time that he spent too with me down there, putting this presentation together and talking with them. The companies around the state that are involved, that are here because of the rural airports and the general aviation airports, is just, the list goes on. This is just a few of the ones that we talked about that were around the state. But we know that the need just to maintain general state of good repair now. We have a number, $77 million is the state funding number. That does not include the federal number. That's one of the things that seems to be a challenge to get across to them, is that's not a total budget number. That's what the state need is. And so I think we've kind of done a pretty good job of that. I know Wayne's going to come here in a minute and talk about how we've been trying to bridge this gap between TDOT, the airports, and the legislature and TAC. And we appreciate all of the help from TAC into trying to put all of this program together and figuring out where we need to go. I think that's just a kind of a reiteration. This year, we asked for 77 million. We got to 23.7 million recurring, roughly $8 million and extra appropriation. And then, of course, there was about 5 million of that was actually allocated and taken out by the legislature directly. So we talked about the economic impact of Tennessee. That seems to be the thing that resonates with the legislature, is just economic impact. There's a lot of other things, but that's what we're really looking for, is what is the economic impact and what do we provide? We talk about the fact that we help with disaster relief and emergency response and air medical and all of that stuff. And that's an important part of the picture. But the economics of the airport is we are paying our way. General aviation generates about $1.1 billion a year in economic impact in the state of Tennessee. We get $25 million from the state and give you back $1 billion. Hello. That just kind of seems to me the message that needs to really resonate with them. And I believe it is resonating. And I hope next year that we will see a little bit of a better improvement of that. And we really need all of the airport managers, the airport board members and everything to really be talking to their state senators, representatives, all of their legislators about what we need and how important it is. That message doesn't resonate if you're not supporting it, and every airport is not supporting it, backing it up and saying, no, we agree, this is what we need. So I appreciate it. I think we're going to give Wayne a few minutes, I believe, or Holly, you coming back up here first, but did you have anything else that you want to add?
No, I just want to say, we also did a TA Day on the Hill. I think some of you were there. Where we go and meet legislators, it is so important, and the funding levels that, JP had mentioned in his slides, not very happy with it, to be honest. We work a lot throughout the year to make sure that TA and the GA airports get the funding we need. You see the number, the 77 that we need. We're at 23 plus 8 minus 5. You're really not moving the needle too much. So, and we're trying, we're going to keep trying, but we can't do it alone. So I really want to emphasize that we need you all to be out there talking to the legislators. Go to the TA website. You'll see their faces on the contact us page. Contact us, ask us information. There's some letters. There's a presentation on the TA website. Go check it out. You can download the letter, put it on your letterhead, sign it, and send it on, because that is the only way that we're going to make a change. We've got the numbers. The general aviation airports across the state were huge numbers. So we've got legislators that are also going to be listening to us. They're constituents. So we want to use that force, that leverage our numbers and make sure that we're heard. So, but that does require us to go out of our comfort zone sometimes and talk to them. They're all people. Initially, I was intimidated by some of the politicians as well, but the more you talk to them, the more you know that they're working for you. It becomes easier. But we need to continue to do that. So I hope if you can take anything today, is take this, that we need to reach out to them. We need to make sure they understand the 77 number and where it's coming from. And also understand that, the IIJA funds have gone away. They were using that in their math in the past, and compiling that within the funding that they were allocating to the GA side. So again, that's what I would leave you with. And if you have any questions, please reach out. You'll see us TA board members around with the vest on, and just go find her on the website, and we'll be happy to help. Holly, back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd now like to welcome up Mr. Wayne Overman from the Tennessee Aeronautics Commission.
Thank you. And again, thank everyone for actually making time this morning. Didn't come with prepared remarks, but I do want to echo a few things that have gone on this morning. Number one, in JP's conversation, we are a block grant state, one of 10. That gives us a lot of flexibility on how we help and manage the funds that we get. But that flexibility has a cost. It has an overhead cost. And so instead of each of the airports having to deal with FAA directly and try and work that out, you can work with the state. And one of the things I've noticed with JP since he's become the director is very transparent. He realizes that the aeronautics division works for you. Granted, we all report to the DOT and to the governor, but we work for the general aviation airports. And so he and his staff have been working very hard to try and make sure there's transparency on how they're doing their business and being reflective of where we can change things, make things more efficient, use your money more efficiently. And the quarterly meetings we have with TAA, I think, have been very impactful and very progressive. One of the things that we're dealing with in the last few years that we haven't had to deal with for decades is we don't have a dedicated fund. For decades, when I was in the consulting business, aeronautics got a dedicated amount of money. You didn't have to lobby for it. You got it. And then the problem, if there was a problem, was figuring out where and how to spend it. Well, that's no longer the case. We have no dedicated fund anymore. And so we have to convince the legislature to give us money out of the general fund. The good part about that, we got a great story to tell. We just haven't been telling it to anybody, okay? And so what we started last year, a little earlier, but last year kind of the big push was to start to tell our story. And that's through the ACIP and needs-based. Look, these are the projects we need just to keep the system intact and operating. And GA is not what many people think is GA. GA is business aircraft. And so there's a couple of things that the state is doing. One is updating the economic impact study to help you better tell your story about your airport. The other thing is the operation counters. We're going to have over 1 million GA operations in this state. That's a lot of aircraft in and out, okay? That's a story to tell that I would be willing to bet over half of the legislators don't have a clue. They understand the air carrier. Air carrier is mass transit. We get it. But GA is where the corporate folks go. The CEO is not going to fly Southwest into Nashville, Tennessee, and drive 4 hours to look at their plant. They want to land close to it. And one of the economic impact directors from years past told me when they have site selection firms coming to town, their primary job is to get you off the list. They have a list of 50 or 100 places that they're trying to narrow down to 3 or 4. And the sooner they can get you off the list, the less time they have to spend with you. And one of those ways to get you off the list is a CEO can't land his airplane near their factory, okay? And so we've got to do a better job of selling our story. Again, we've got a great story to tell. We just got to get out there and tell it. One of the things that I get asked, though, when I go to the legislature is, how are you going to use our money wisely? Okay. And that question is, we're developing and have been using the state priority ranking system, where we rank every project based on a series of different criteria as to what is in the best value of the state. And one of the things that we are trying to do is support those airports who support themselves. It shouldn't be the state's responsibility to force you to have a GA airport. If you don't think your GA airport is important and you're not interested in putting your money in it, why should the state? And so one of the criteria is going to be, are you stepping up? Are you putting time? Are you asking your legislature to come out and see your facility and look what's going on? Do they understand how important it is to your community? Does your mayor? Is it in the budget? Are they helping you support? And we've got some great examples around this state where their communities are stepping up and doing stuff with or without state support. And it's easy for the state then to try and give more money to those airports to accelerate that. And so we're going to be looking more and more on that. Are you working hard and are you driving towards self-sufficiency? The states come out with models on what you should be charging market rate for rents, land use. If you're not doing those kind of things, you're going to be hurt on a state priority ranking system because you're not doing your part of the bargain. And so I would tell you, your mayors, county mayors, whatever, we need to do a better job of driving towards self-sufficiency. With that, I think we have a lot to be proud of in this state. As JP said, 180 million in state funding. That's probably puts us in the top 5. Unfortunately, we need more in the GA market to keep the system going. And if we can help, reach out, be glad to go to talk to any of your groups if necessary, if that will help. I know JP and his staff are there to help. But again, thank you for your time this morning. Thank you for your interest in being here. And let's keep this program going. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Overman. I'd now like to welcome up Aaron Burkle, who's the team lead over planning and environmental.
Good morning. Y'all need to have way more energy than that. It's only Tuesday. So good morning, Aaron Burkle, Planning and Environmental. And this morning I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what's changed since last year, because a little bit has in our team, a little bit about what we do and what we're going to be doing. So since last year with Epic, we have staffed up significantly. If you remember of this time last year, we had 3 transportation program monitors, and now we have 6, 2 of which are seniors and 1 is a statewide. So as of today, we've got Joseph on board as statewide leading the ACIP and TASP. Brought him over from the dark side, project management. And we've been blessed to have him so far to support the ACIP process, because as you all know, it's a pretty big bear. We've got Javier and Kevin as our seniors. Kevin came in about sometime last year. And we've got Chase, Holly, and Tanner. Chase still on board this week, and then Holly and Tanner have joined in the last 6 months or so. So really glad to have them with us as well. Part of the reason we need so many more staff, and we have so many more staff, as you saw in John's and other slides, who are also staffing up, is because our responsibilities have changed a little bit since last year too, and have been evolving over the years as the MOAs get updated with the FAA as a block grant state. So 5 years ago, when I first started, we primarily did ALP updates, forecasts, environmental, and helped out with the ACIPs. Now, our section leads the ACIP. We have forecast and critical aircraft determination approval authority, ALP approval authority. We do standalone exhibit A's much more often now as P3 becomes a larger thing for airports, private developments, hangars, non-aeronautical use, and also land use changes and disposals. We just recently started inheriting OE AAA 7460 runway supplemental data for the FAA. We are officially a line of business according to the FAA, so that's been cool. And we also have IFP requests. We didn't used to have very many statewide projects, mostly just the TASP and the EIS, but now we have quite a few. So the responsibilities have grown significantly, and to remain efficient and make sure that we have the support to cover all these programs, we now have the people that we need to do that. So just to give you kind of a visual of what that looks like, This is at a high level what the average workload for one of our aviation transportation specialists looks like. They'll have on average 4 ALPs, a couple statewide projects, and roughly 13 airports each. And for each of those 13 airports, they've got all of the NEPA, land use changes, any Exhibit A's, airspace, IFP, runway supplemental data, and all of the ACIPs. And this year, just like last year and the year before, we will continue working very closely with the airports on developing those, drafting them and updating them with current balances before the meetings, and updating the data in Black Cat for you all, and facilitating the communications and scheduling. So if you imagine what this would look like with just 3 people, it would get really busy. Everything would start overlapping each other, and just like what happens in real life, it piles up. So we're looking forward to the rest of 2026 and moving into 2027 with a staff that can handle all of our workload. So to talk a little bit about the statewide projects we have, because we have more than the TASP and the EIS. And I know we've presented some of it at office hours, and you've heard of some of the work we're doing, but I just wanted to take a minute to go through each of them a little bit at a time. So hangar rates and charges. This year, we released a land lease module to add on to this. Kevin McGee has been leading that effort in partnership with Kimley Horn. He just actually did an office hours on it on March. So if you didn't tune into that and have any interest, you can go and watch that recording. He goes through it at a much more detailed level, and it can also be found on our website on the TAF's 2040 page. Javier, as Wayne was talking about with the operations data counter program, Javier is our lead for that. What started in the pilot program is just something we did a year in advance of each ALP has become a statewide program. So not only is it an airport product that we're supporting, but it's also a statewide product. And a lot of the information Wayne was talking about is from that statewide product to help us tell a good story and develop strong justifications for all the different things we do at our office, but particularly also for funding to show the demand. So if you have any questions on those, contact Javier or Kevin. And something new we're working on that we haven't rolled out yet, but you will see soon, is the private development SOP. So what used to be Section 163 that got canceled with the Reauthorization Act and turned into Section 743, but we're not actually supposed to call it 743, is what we're referring to as the private development SOP right now. And this is going to be a step-by-step guidebook that helps the airports and consultants navigate what documents you're going to need to be prepared to submit for us to initiate that review. And depending on that review, what next steps could come, and better understand what lead times to expect with any type of private development on airport property. So if you have any questions, suggestions, recommendations, or anything like that, please let Joseph know. He's also working with our planning on-call consultant, Kimley Horn, on this, and we're really looking forward to getting this out soon because I know we've needed it for a while. And then zoning. So this one has been in development for a while, and we are actually under final deliverables review right now. So you should see this coming out very soon. This is also going to be a guidebook for zoning, but will also come with a plethora of other supplemental resources to help airports navigate establishing city or county local zoning at their airport and land use compatibility planning. So any questions or concerns, again, contact Kevin. This will come at office hours soon as we can get it scheduled, depending on when final deliverables are published. And our TASP update. So we did complete one recently. This is a update of our current goals and performance measures. And it came with a lot of other products. So we have a TASP dashboard now, new airport report cards that you're going to see at your ACIP working sessions this year. as well as a new survey portal that we can use to update those report cards more regularly. That will also update our dashboard and can, for a third purpose, be used as our task update survey moving forward. So any questions with that? Joseph's your guy. You will see that at an office hours over the summer as well. So stay tuned on that for more. And last but not least, our aviation economic impact study. I think it was actually at this Garm in Murfreesboro last year where we received a lot of suggestions and support for a new economic impact study. And we've almost got it for y'all. We did it. So Javier has been leading this effort in partnership with Kimley Horn as well. We just finished surveying and should have preliminary results out in June sometime. So if you have any interest in those or any questions, please contact Javier. He'll be happy to get you any information that you need. And aside from statewide projects, I also wanted to talk at a very high level what we do with the ACIP forecasts and ALPs and how those work together, and really the gist of why those things are so important to our section and all of our processes, because they're all three separate documents, but they work together in a very important way. So if you want to learn more about these on a detailed level and a technical level, I invite you, just like John did, to come to TAP Academy. We have several modules that cover all of this. But for today's time constraints, we're just going to hit it on a high note. So on the ALP, we're developing 60% set. We're putting future conditions down on paper. We're looking at 10 to 20 year long-term projects. And at that point in time, the idea of a project that the airport has is very clear in our minds, like so clear we could almost touch it. And that's what it looks like at that point in time. New ALP, new ideas, projects coming in. We know what we want to do. But as time marches on and we progress through the time span of that ALP and that project starts to arrive at the 5-year-ish term of the ACIP, it starts to look a little bit more like a puzzle. And there's pieces that we have to keep in place. And we, during the ACIP process, begin identifying what those pieces are and making sure they're all in place, because as we pursue the 3-year programmed version of that project, we want to make sure we're not going to have any setbacks or barriers. And sometimes what can happen at that 3-year point when we're starting to fund those projects is that the pieces go missing. If you remember in John's slide, sometimes that can be NPE expiring. It can be, the FAA changing their guidance from 1050.1F to 1050.1G, and your EA could now be a documented CADX, and the FAA's interpretation of, environmental changes. Change happens, it's completely normal, but really at the end of the day, all our section is trying to do is keep as many of these pieces in place from the time we oversee your ALP to the time we see your funding request come in the current fiscal year for your programmed projects. And how we're starting to do that, aside from having more staff, is building strong systems that can account for that change. So we know it can happen. We know sometimes it'll be at the last minute and it could be very unexpected. So having processes that have room for fluid change and adaptability is really important. And it also allows us to be consistent across the state, across each project. So there's no surprises, no plot twists in the project that we don't want to see. And then data governance. So we have a lot of data. We've got ops counter data, we've got task data, we've got economic impact study, ACIP, ALPs, inspections, just all sorts of data. So what do we do with that really? Well, we govern it. So Black Cat is an area where we're trying to consolidate a lot of our processes and empower the reporting of that so that we can be more efficient with our data and also have a higher level of integrity with it. So when we get a question about, oh, can we do this? Or do you know that? Or do you have, what were we programmed for that? It doesn't take us so long to go and dig it up and find it and look in 4 different files across our server. It can all just be collected in one place or pull a report that pulled it right out of the system for where we needed to look. And then another thing we're really focusing on in our section right now too is training and research, staying current on federal standards and state processes, but also just getting hands-on and going out there, showing each other what we learn and eliminating any knowledge silos, making sure our team is consistent across the board at what we know, and we have demonstrated practice with all these processes, knowledge, and content and skills. And how we're going to do that is through a matrix team, because it won't just take planning and environmental to support y'all's projects and the success of delivering all this funding. It'll take all 4 sections: asset management, project delivery, grants, and planning and environmental. And as we integrate into this matrix model, it won't just be one person that kind of asks around for help as much as it is 4 different subject matter experts coming to the table and making sure all of the knowledge that we have is there to help deliver the project. So that is all I had today. Okay, I don't have a question slide, so thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Aaron. I'd now like to welcome up Joseph Howes. He's our statewide technical specialist, and he'll be talking about the Airport Capital Improvement Program.
All right, like they said, my name is Joseph Howes. I am the statewide technical specialist for the planning environmental section. I have converted from the dark side. It's much nicer over here, so. Now, we're gonna be talking about everybody's favorite topic at the GARMS is the ACIP. All right, first we're gonna talk about planning. What is planning? Establishing your goals, laying out a plan to get those goals met, right? The Airport Capital Improvement Plan is the method by which we take the goals that we have on your ALP, those pie in the sky, one day, hopefully, and we make it real, right? That's the process by which we make reality, your goals become reality. So we need to start is organizing those projects into an actionable set of plans. So if you'll note here, we have, let's see if I can hit the right button. We got fiscal year 27, 2 projects. Fiscal year 28, we're pulling heavy on here. We got 4 projects. Now there's a lot of airports that can struggle to get 4 projects in a year. I mean, we're going from final design to construction, from preliminary design to final design, and starting a preliminary design all in 1 fiscal year. That's a lot of eggs to keep juggling without dropping something and making a mess, right? So we're trying to find a realistic way that we can execute the plans that we're setting. So we want to start off by setting a realistic plan, something that each of y'all on a yearly basis can achieve. All right. And you'll notice here we've got some fun numbers and organizational. We'll hit on that a couple more times, which is kind of as a primer for the future here. So the big problem that we all have been talking about today and that we all encounter on a daily basis is funding. How do we fund the projects? We got a lot of needs. We got a lot of wants. We got a lot of hopes and dreams. How do we get that to be funded? All right, we got to start with a plan. We work through the cycle. We take the funding 1 step at a time. We plan ahead 3 to 5 years. The more we can iron that plan out and narrow that vision as we come to the actual, submission for projects, the more we can be able to actively and predictably fund your projects, right? So we're upcoming another year here, about ready to kick off some working sessions. I've stolen a few slides from the TAP Academy, so y'all get a little preview if you've seen it before. Bear with me, please, and try to stay awake. I would really appreciate it. So we're talking about the SPR model. This is how we can fund your projects with state dollars. This is how we also are trying to be as transparent as possible with the way in which we allocate those funds. Yeah, there we go. All right, and these next few slides will be in your ACIP working session packets. We will go over them as much as you need to at that time as well. But just as a quick overview, we prioritize our system projects the same way that the FAA does. So you're not having to learn two different priority method systems. We just use the same one, keep it simple for everyone. Safety is the most important thing. Now, you go to every airport can say, oh, well, this is a safety project. The pavement's failing. We need to fix it because it's a safety issue. Yes and no, but we have, pavement preservation and maintenance as an item for that. So it's not just, safety here. We're talking about like obstructions, being able to take off and land safely, right? Keeping those surfaces clear. Security, that's like fencing, pavement maintenance, building maintenance, we got infrastructure preservation, keep your standards up. And the further down this list we go, I know everybody's favorite is this one. Unfortunately, it doesn't score very well, right? That's because we have to prioritize the higher priorities first. So we give them bigger numbers. Now, in the next section here, we get licensing. You have a standard license, 10 points. If you have a conditional license, but you have a project on your ACIP that will fix that, 10 points. If the current project that you're requesting funding for alleviates that gap, you get 20 points. Giving extra credence towards the fact that we're trying to focus on safety, right? Now, for those of you that are Part 139, you still get 10 points, don't worry. Next, the closer you are to the runway, the more points you get. The more critical the surface is, the higher priority we put towards that. So you can max out at 15 points here, from runways to taxiways, environmental, hangars and fuel get 6, buildings get 4, and so on. And based on the type of work you're doing, are we maintaining, rehabbing, repairing, clearing obstructions, 10 points. Now, if you look here, if we're trying to clear some trees, safety, 20 points. Conditional license, trying to mitigate that, another 20 points. You're taking off from a runway, you're clearing those surfaces, that's another 15 points. You're at 45 right there after 3. Oh, here's obstructions, another 10, that's 55 points. So you can see they add up really quickly if you're trying to, maximize these here. But if we're, say, trying to do revenue producing, you just have a conditional license, that's 12 points. Hangars and fuel, 6. All right. So we want you to understand this system so that you can request state funding in a manner that we can fund it best for you. So if you're just saying, hey, we're a little bit short on this project, can you give me some extra state funds to cover that? This is how we're going to do it. So please organize your funding schedules properly so that we can maximize our funding for you. That's the goal, right? And these right here, these criteria, these are where y'all can really influence and maximize your point totals here. So if you have expired grants, that means your grant has gone past the end date that is written on that piece of paper that you sign, and you have not sent us a closure letter. So if we have a closure letter on file, even if it's still open in Black Cat, if we have it in our system and in hand, it's not expired. But if you go past 90 days and we haven't received any letters from you, then it's expired. 7.5 points if you have no expired grants. If your historical compliance with your ACIP, which is really focusing on the last fiscal year, right? So last year, did you deliver at least 50% of the projects that you told us that you would do? You get your 7.5 points. Now, we understand things change, right? So if you communicate with us at this time, we will not hold that against you and it will not count against your compliance on your ACIP. But if you just can't do it and you don't tell us and the end of the fiscal year rolls around and you didn't perform on 3 out of your 4 projects, you're down here in a 0, right? So the idea is please communicate with us so we can keep things active and we can shuffle and get the money allocated properly to those that are able to spend it in the year. Now, right here, this is everybody's least favorite topic, local share, right? Standard match, 5.5%. You get no bonus points, right? These are really bonus points right here as I consider them. But if you are able to get above into that 10% range, that's 10 points. Now, when we're down at the end of the fiscal year and we're programming and trying to get money allocated, 10 points or 7.5 of these, that can go a long way to really put you above those that you're competing for funds with, right? Now, last few items here. based on your task classifications, you get a few points here. And these two here are based on TDOT management decisions. So if your project is critical for funding, and if it is in alignment with our goals and what we're looking for, then we'll give you a few extra points here. There we go. All right. So this is how funding works at a programmatic level for the state. Okay. When you submit your funding request, your plan, your ACIP at the end of the working sessions, right? You have all these different kinds of projects here. We submit them. We have 3 different tiers. You have tier 1, tier 3, and tier 2. Now, if you notice, tier 1 and 3 just kind of go right over here into the draft and get programmed. So those tier 1 projects are anything that's your federal funding, and the state only inputs our match on that, right? So if you're putting an NPE project, AIG funded projects, that's where you're going to find these. Tier 3 projects are your planning studies, your ALPs, those type of things. Those also go right through. Those are 95% state funded, and these will all just get put into the program. So what we will do is we will take our budget, take all of these projects for every fiscal year, and allocate funds to those. Then we will come down here to your tier 2 projects, which is any project in which you have requested more than the match for your federal funds. So if you're trying to build a new terminal or something, and you have requested 6% state match, you're in tier 2, not up here in tier 1. So what will happen then is we will apply the scoring methodology we just ran through real quick, and we will rank them in order of the highest point totals. And then we'll start at the top of the list and work our way down until we run out of money for that year. Okay, and we'll put all those into the program, and we'll go back through here to the next fiscal year, and we'll start over. Funding these projects first, then we'll start at the top of the list where we ended off the last fiscal year, and over and over and over again. It's kind of boring to talk about, but it's a lot of fun for me as an engineer to go through these iterative processes. So that is why it is important for y'all to understand this model. Okay, if you're just saying, hey, I want an extra $100,000 on my $1.5 million project, and that's only going to put you at a 6% share, and you're not going to score very high. As we go through this iterative process, you're going to be out in year 4 or 5, right? So the more strategically you can plan those funds and request those funds from us, the better we're able to fund them and get them in the times that y'all are hoping for, right? Because at the end of the day, like y'all have plans, we have plans. We're trying to make sure that everybody's plans are on the same page. So I get this question a lot. Why does my plan change after I submit it after the working session? Every year, everybody submits a bunch of projects, and then we go through programming, and it all comes out different. Lots of it is that state funding problem, right? If it scores badly, it gets pushed. And if your construction scores badly and it gets pushed 3 years, we have to push your design out because we can only hold designs for 2 years. Okay. So we have this fun. Sorry for y'all over here, but I can only point at this screen. But we have this nice list here. We also have to approve and allocate your federal funds based on this, right? So we have to start with safety and work our way down to revenue producing, which is why if you want a hangar, you have to fill out that fun little application that says all of these other needs are taken care of before we can approve a hangar. So if you come in and you say, well, I want to add capacity to my airport, but I have significant pavement needs, we have to put that pavement project first. All right, so we're working to help you all to identify those projects better in our working sessions this year so that the plans that y'all submit and what we discuss in those working sessions can be closer to the reality that we get after programming. That's our goal for y'all, so we know the plans beforehand and keep things as similar as possible. Now, fiscal year 27 is about to start. Now, my AI generated image does not work as well as I had hoped, as the ripples do not affect one another. However, you get the point. Every time you request a new project, say we sit here in this Garm and you say, oh, well, I could really use some extra state funding on an obstruction clearing project this fiscal year. Let me ask for some more state funding in 27. And as you saw, those projects score really well, right? So that's going to be bumped to the highest, to the top of the list. And it shuffles everybody else down the list. And as I told you, we start at funding at the top of whoever scores the highest and work our way down. And it has been mentioned at your ACIP working sessions, we usually get down to around the 70s, low to mid 70s. So if you're somebody that's sitting at 72 and we get 3 more obstruction projects and your 72 is now, well, that's next year. That's why the plan changes, right? So the more we can keep the plan the same for this year, the more stable everybody's plans become, right? Because every single drop, every single request affects everybody else's funding, especially at a state level, right? So we have a few updated processes I've kind of alluded to a couple times to help y'all to help us and y'all to have a more functioning program this year. Like we said, we have been using our matrix teams. So coming out to your working sessions, you will have someone from planning and environmental and from project delivery. If you have extra needs or questions, we can have grants and compliance on the phone. We might be able to get them out next year, but we're currently running through inspections at the moment. We don't want to overtax our grants compliance folks. We also have asset management, in which right now, any pavement maintenance needs that you have, we are trying to help with those, right? So we have several different programs to help with those. So at those sessions, we will try and identify projects that we could use through our programs to help y'all to be able to fund things further down that list, right? So we have those matrix teams that will be out here. And we had a lot of technical issues with spreadsheets last year. We were trying to shoot back to our server with all the spreadsheets, and it was a very large sheet. We had a lot of crashes and a lot of issues with data maintenance. So we've changed how we're doing that. We're doing smaller spreadsheets, trying to reduce those crashes, trying to keep everything local so that at your meetings, we don't rely on internet processes to have our meetings function effectively and to get our plans into place, right? We've also, like we talked about, had a lot of staff come in this last year. We've been working on training them, trying to get them everything from here's large funding sources, airports, what airports need, all the way down to where we've been doing mock sessions with them. When you sit down with an airport manager, what kind of questions are they going to ask? We've been utilizing our more senior project staff to kind of act as airport managers in those situations because they've been in those meetings. They know what y'all need, and they've been helping us to train our newer folks. We'll also be sending as many experienced folks along with our newer folks to help make sure that the same process for everybody gets applied equally across the state, right? We also are shooting within 1 week of our ACIP working session to get you back a copy of what was discussed with any IOU. So if you ask us a question and we don't know, we're going to get back to you by the next week, right? Five business days is what we're shooting for. And our staff has been drilled on this. They know that it's coming, and that is the plan to execute for y'all so that you can get that back so you can get in front of your boards with those plans and get things going. So here's kind of our life cycle for our projects. All right, we're sitting here at the Garms today. We've got working sessions coming up soon. And we'll be going to every single one of your airports and getting the best plan that we can set up for you at that time. This year, our date for confirmation of the ACIP is August the 28th. And then the next Monday is the 31st. I will sit down and get started programming all of the projects for everybody. We'll be working very closely with Aaron and JP and Christopher to make sure we're all on the same page and we get the best program out for y'all. Getting that finished up around October, getting November, we get deliverables ready, get a QA, QC, and submit it to the FAA. After we get that submitted to the FAA, we'll submit to y'all and say, this is the approved program for the next 4 years. We're looking at fiscal years 28 through 32 with this plan, right? So what does that mean for y'all's schedules? All right, so get those working sessions, and get those products back within 1 week to you. And then we need you to take that to your stakeholders, whether you have a board, a county commission, a city, whatever governing board you need to get in front of. Please, as soon as you can, get that scheduled, get in front of them, get them the plan so that y'all can be working towards getting funding set for y'all for the next year. That's something that we hear a lot. We get, oh, well, we went to city council and they said, oh, it's not in the budget this year. This is how we can help you all to get it in the budget. We get you those programs so you can get in front of your boards and get in front of city council to help them to know. All right, it's all about communication. The more everybody's on the same page, the better things flow. Now, if you go before them and you have questions that you need to move some things around, That's why we encourage you to do that early. Then we can follow up as long as it's before the August the 28th. Call up your planners, call myself. We'll get something, we'll get it fixed and get things the way that y'all are hoping to get things, right? Then as soon as you know, you don't have to wait for the 28th of August. You can tell me anytime between your working session and August the 28th. The sooner you can confirm and we can get things started, the easier it is for everybody. But I understand we do have a deadline though, just in case, August the 28th. In case you missed it the last time, it's August the 28th. Thank you. All right. So, and then obviously we have all this coming up, but fiscal year 27 kicks off before then, which is another reason we really need to keep fiscal year 27 the way it is currently planned, because fiscal year is half over by the time you get confirmations in December, right? So let's start executing fiscal year 27 as soon as we can. We'll get you those back in December, as I've told you. Now, we are also changing the way that we look at the ACIP. We're looking at it more as a living document than a once a year snapshot. The goal and the hope for this is that we can go and have your working sessions not be such a complete overhaul and be like, well, the last time we sat down, we talked about this, but all these different things have changed and new businesses have come in and we got to rework the whole plan. The idea is if you have a new project or something you need to get on your ACIP, you call your project manager, your planner, and we're going to get that added in and get things worked out. Also, we understand that the estimates that you provide at those working sessions are best guesses at best, right? Sometimes things come in high, sometimes they come in low. Unfortunately, not as often as we'd hope, but when those plans change, you will be seeing this worksheet. We will be sending out a spreadsheet to y'all so you can rearrange things so that you're aware of the funding changes downstream for your airport. All right, so if you have a project that we had programmed for $300,000, it's coming for $6 million, we need to make a change. So I got an example to work through if I've got oh yeah, I've got some time, sweet. All right, we're going to, how does this work? Work through a quick example. All right, this is one that I just approved for one of my airports here recently. So Morristown, they wanted to change and have this project and move this project up. They're having some issues with their terminal project, so we need to move another project up. So we need to shuffle some things around, right? So we take this whole row over here. Now this is showing all of your funding. So it's the cost estimate that you provided at the ACIP working session or your engineer, if you're an airport, right? How much we have budgeted for those based on all these different funding sources that are available, right? Oh, I gotta use this one. So for this process, move that up. And then we'll just take this one here that we're moving down. And we'll come down and say, all right, well, let's replace that down here. And we'll delete this row. No, just delete the whole row. Okay. And then we come here and say, all right, now this is in 2027. This one's in 2029. Bam. And then just for clarity's sake, this one changed. And then all of these also changed. Just a quick highlight, just to say, all right, this is what we're changing. This is why we're changing it. There is a box at the end here for comments. If you have any comments, why did we need to move this up? Why are we changing the funding? Add a few comments for me. Send it to your planner, send it to your project manager, and they will send it, and we'll get our living copy of the ACIP up to date and keep this up and keep this going throughout the year. So when we sit down in working sessions It's less of a, all right, let's sit down and revamp the whole program and figure everything out. This, you know, it's just, all right, let's update our cost estimates. Let's find some PSR dates. When are we coming in? What can we do? Is there anything needs to change? All right, we're good. Let's go. Let's take a look at the airport and have some fun, right? The idea is to make things as easy as for everybody as we possibly can, and keep the plans intact. Let's see here. All right. Oh. Now I gotta find where we're at. Sorry. Hit that button. All right. I believe we got a few more slides here. All right. So just to recap real quick, we're trying to limit our project numbers per year to 3. Just now, there are a few of you that can do more than that. We have a lot of you that can't really do 3, and y'all know what you're capable of at your airports and with your city councils and what your budget is. So let's try and set a realistic plan. We're shooting for no more than 3 projects in a fiscal year per airport. I really hope that you can understand tier 2. We can go through it more in depth and answer a lot of questions and have a lot of back and forth at your ACIP working sessions. So please use that model to request funds in a manner that will benefit you and not have us push your projects out to year 32 and then you're wondering why, right? We don't want that. You don't want that. It's not good for anybody. PSR dates. We got to have some dates. We got to know when to plan, when things are coming in. That's not just for us, that's for y'all. So, and we are working on a new system so that we can help to remind folks, hey, we got projects coming up next month. Let's get ready. Let's get in front of that city council so that they know funding requests are coming. That funding is coming due soon, right? So the more you can keep everybody on the same page as early as possible, the easier everything flows. There we go. All right. Currently, our planning team is preparing all of the agendas and drafting programs based on what our living copy looks like today for your working sessions. Now, I need to reiterate, anything that we return to you at the end after those working sessions within weeks is not a commitment of funding. That will be in December, right? We always have to go through that programming process before it's an official commitment of funding. Those returned notes are for y'all to confirm on that, what your goals are. And then as we have been doing for the past couple of years, our staff will enter into Black Cat all of the information discussed, allocating funds and what sources and all that kind of fun stuff. So y'all don't have to go into Black Cat and say, well, I haven't done this in a year. How do I do this again? And it's just a real headache for everybody. We'll help you out with that. And I believe that is the end of my slides. Does anybody have any questions? Am I allowed to ask questions? Yeah. I don't answer questions, Joe. You know that.
Yes, we do have time for questions if there are any questions. If not, we'll go into another break and we'll, oh.
There we go. Test. All right. I just want to, so a lot of focus on the ACIP again. You know, I kind of touched on that in the beginning. One point I want to drive home, we're going to kind of switch gears and you're going to hear about a lot of other initiatives, programs, things that we're doing. But while ACIP is on your mind, our ability to have good information in, execute that plan, that speaks to all of our credibility when we talk about the information being used in the future, engaging with legislators, defending our program, defending, you know, the data-driven nature of trying to show that the funding is put to the highest and best use possible. It all comes down to this. So I know we're beating the drum, you know, the whole meeting on the ACIP, but it really is so important to everything that from work planning to, you know, maximizing funding and all that, and the betterment of our system as a whole. So I just want to Joseph did a great job kind of going through, more tactical, like how do we feed that information in? How do we revise it? Come up with a plan that we can all agree to and move forward. So just wanted to put that plug in before, not trying to take away from your second break here. I know you're probably eager for it, but cool. And with the questions, we just wanted our time can get away from us really quickly. So it's not that you can't ask questions. We were just trying to structure that a little bit more. So hopefully that came across right. But yeah, happy to take any questions you have before we go to break. Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody.
We'll come back at 11:15. Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and get started again. All right, I'd like to welcome up Christopher Starr. He's the State Aviation Manager over Project Delivery.
Much. Test. Thank you. I don't like this. Just stand behind the podium. I have to move. I think it's possibly a problem. I don't know. Anyways, I'm actually under the weather. So effectively, if I sound hoarse, if I start sneezing, or if I cough, just forgive me. You might want to disinfect this thing. I have been medicated for 48 hours. I should be okay. Lord knows I have 7 kids, so I get anything. So who knows? So with that specifically, I want to go ahead and introduce our staff associated with Project Delivery. We've been renamed from Project Management to Project Delivery. So effectively, I have Chuck Hoskins. Did I say that right? Finally? No? Hoskins. Hoskins. I've only known this guy for 3.5 years, and I still can't say his last name. So with that specifically, and I am trying. And he's a gem. So effectively, yeah, and all of our employees are gems, by the way. So effectively, we also have Mike Stoltz, Joy Vaughn, Delavon Arif, and Derek Bird, and specifically our newest hire, Catherine Etheridge. Did I say that right too? Okay, good. At least I got one. So specifically also with that, the role of the team itself is we are working to effectively deliver those projects. So as soon as it's on the ACIP, as soon as effectively it's executed, we are now looking for those PSR dates. We're trying to make sure we work with the airport and their consultant to get these projects to PSR, make sure everything is basically ready to go, and effectively through that, carry it through the entire process to get approved. And then from there, get funded. And then at that point, hit the ground running associated to whatever design is going on in terms of the scoping meetings all the way up to construction. Get these projects built as quickly as possible so that you can benefit from these projects as airports specifically. The biggest thing that we're also doing is we're coordinating not only with the airports, but the FAA, consultants, internal matrix teams. There's a lot of coordination that's going on with this team member, and them being agile is incredibly important for the actual team itself. And that's why we actually built the matrix team the way that we did, because I need them more fluid. I need them to be running around to make sure any types of holdups are freed up so that we can keep these projects flowing. So the biggest thing also is we're trying to make sure we drive consistency, effectiveness, and reliability in terms of these projects being delivered. So topics that we're going to be covering today, it was actually after last year's Garms that carried over. Some of these was actually in the office hours that we're doing monthly, that's virtual. Going down through with this is going to be project schedules, Tennessee LiDAR maps, which basically is just a fancy term for a bunch of lasers that shoots out, comes back, and it gives you an XYZ coordinate. specific for surveying purposes, that is. Pavement Condition Index, or otherwise called PCI, vegetation software for state approach. That should be coming up in May's this month's office hours, so stay tuned. Effectively with that, the FAA flight check process, the fuel and bituminous payment adjustment, we also call that indexing, the state aviation mix, and also some other things that we're developing that I'll cover in asset management. So one of the things that we covered actually in the office hours specifically is project schedules. So the schedule and major milestones, effectively, as you're submitting an application within our Black Cat aviation system, we effectively have been working to standardize that. What are we actually looking for in terms of information? I am not looking for a critical path methodology associated to constructing and what are all the bulldozers. I'm looking at the actual items we need in order to execute a grant specifically. So when you actually open up that template specifically, and if you don't know where this is at, just ping your project delivery staff member. They'll be able to send it to you. Effectively with that, as an example, development, method one, it's going to be a little hard to see, so my apologies, but basically what you'll notice is that there's several different dates associated to projects going from preliminary step all the way to final design bidding, all the way to construction. And most of the things that we're looking for is, hey, what PSR date you're looking for to actually submit this project? What is your scoping meeting date? What is your 30, 60, 90%? These are just items that we need to have in order to fulfill FAA requirements to ensure that the grant is actually able to be executed specifically. So we're looking for just minimum amount of information. We're not looking for an extravagant amount of information, and it's basically your best judgment in terms of where things are actually falling in terms of project timeline. I will say this because it actually has happened a couple of times at least. Look at your dates. Don't pick a Sunday as a date for anything, because unless you're just that gung-ho about working on a Sunday, I don't see that happening. So with that, talking about LiDAR now. So the Department of Finance and Administration. So we're the Department of Transportation within Tennessee. There's also many other departments within Tennessee. There's a Department of Finance and Administration. They partner up with the TDOT, Tennessee Department of Transportation, as well as several others to go fly across the state with a consultant. So what they've done is over the last several fiscal years, they've collected across the entire state with an airplane data. So what that means specifically is there's also a future plan locations across the entire state. All this means is when I was working as a consultant firm associated as a CADSman, what we ended up doing is if we're doing a lot of preliminary design, we'd utilize this data to figure out what is the possibilities. Is this project even possibly successful? And then we would pay the money to get a surveyor to go out there and survey the actual projects themselves to actually make it more cemented at that point to go ahead and move forward. So with that specifically, just as an example, leveraging LiDAR, this was something that we did several years ago, associated that data for vegetation before we had the software that we have now. And what we're able to do at that point is, as a feasibility, figure out, can we actually do this with the plane? Could this actually function? Could we actually do this with a drone in the near future? And this is something that we were able to do with that said data. Another topic of hand that's really interesting is PCR, Payment Condition Index. The biggest thing for that is, all it is, when you look at the American Standard of Testing Materials, ASTM, all it specifies is that it's just an indicator that if it's a low score, something is going on, more than likely in maintenance. If it drastically decreases, then you probably need to do an engineering study, because more than likely there's probably some sort of structure failure of that mix in terms of needing to be rehabbed or reconstructed. So usually if it's a low number, just take a gander at it. Take a look at specifically the distresses of the pavement and see if it can be repaired. And that's what the biggest thing for the ACIP working session that's coming up is, just annotate it. And what we'll do at that point is take a little bit deeper dive to figure out truly, can we go ahead and take care of this, and when can we take care of this? And I plan to effectively associate with that. As we got the ACIP rough draft, we'll have some of these already outlined in terms of what we're planning to do to make sure there's concurrence between all parties. The other thing too that's going to be coming up in our May office hours is our vegetation software. We actually worked with a actual client company, that is, to basically develop what we were wanting in terms of an end result. And what we were looking for at that point is, if we were to fly the actual approach surface with a drone, we want to create a set of plans using AI and effectively have it effectively as close as we possibly can, where we can just execute. The things that I noticed when we're doing in construction is, as an engineer myself, I love being exact. I love being 100% certain that I can say this will work. When you bring in uncertainty, that's when everybody, at least with an engineering degree, goes, I don't know about this. The reality is, with vegetation, the trees are still growing, regardless of when you took the snapshot. So however long you take to design it, and then you finally execute, well, that tree may have grown another 2 feet. by the time you actually got that project on the actual streets. So the reality is, where does it make more sense to ensure we have reliability? And that is actually in the surveyor. So having that project on the street as quick as possible to go ahead and get bid results. And if you have at least 80% of those trees well, then to be honest, that surveyor will be able to get that last percentage of trees to tell essentially the contractor where to cut before that contractor demobilized. We've had a project before where the contractor actually demobilized. There was no surveyor there. We came out there only to find that there was more trees to be cut. So the airport was not happy. Consultant was not happy. And then effectively what it came down to is we ended up doing this process and it worked out really well. So all in all, what it comes down to is we're trying to do this for state approaches to remove conditional licenses across the state. This is the one of many sheets that it actually produces. And what it does basically, it gives you an XYZ coordinate, how much tree to actually top and or remove, as well as other data points that can actually be useful. It actually also produces a KMZ or KML file. So you can actually import that into Google Earth or basically your cell phone if you wanted to. So you can actually walk the property if you want to try to find the tree. So something else for awareness is the FAA flight check process. So February 27th of this year, specifically, we pushed out a development update. We actually went ahead and created a statewide master reimbursable agreement that we worked through with the FAA for flight checks. This was something that we adopted and we stole actually from Oklahoma, nicely. So effectively, they were already doing this. And what we were running into from the project delivery side of the house is it was taking anywhere between 6 months to 2 years to actually go ahead and get a flight check done. And the reasoning behind all of that was it took so much time to load the funds from the locals all the way to the federal government, get to all the different agreements and all the red tape. And then as soon as the money's finally loaded into the coffers of the federal government, then they can actually schedule, which then the scheduling only takes typically 4 to 6 weeks. Well, we've basically eliminated that entire process to where effectively we already have $150,000 loaded to the federal government. All we need to do now is if it's a proper project that needs to be executed, all we have to do is tell them schedule it. And therefore, talking to Oklahoma, that typically takes anywhere between 3 to 6 weeks to effectively knock out the flight check. What that means for you is if you have a runway light or runway edge light or anything lights typically related to your airport, you technically cannot turn them on until you get them flight checked specifically. This eliminates that entire process so that we can effectively get your lights turned on as soon as it's installed. So with that, it is 100% state funded, but the biggest thing with it is coordinate that with project delivery. It has to be a good project, not just because you want flight check for, I don't know, whatever reason. I don't think anybody would just randomly want one. But anyways, fuel and bituminous payment adjustment. So this is an interesting one that's going on. It's still technically developing at the moment. I was hoping to actually have it finalized. So effectively at basically back in 2022, we went ahead and started this process because we've been doing this on the roadway side for over a decade. It isn't something new. Effectively, if you have fuel and oil prices going up and down, as it always does every 5 to 10 years, whatever it does, I don't know, it helps to stabilize the market in terms of your projects across the state. We do this on the roadway side. We approach the idea of doing this for state-funded only projects. We also approach this in the idea of doing this for federally funded projects. We were successful to include this into a couple of federally funded projects, but then the FAA at headquarters, and I'm not bashing them because honestly, we have a great FAA, ADO, great Southern region, great headquarters, great people in general, little short staff, but great people. The reality of it all specifically is they're about to come out with new contract specifications in the very near future. So they asked us effectively, hey, wait to use this. We have to go ahead and make sure that it doesn't create problems in the contract language for the terms and conditions. We were, although, able to include it into Smyrna's discretionary project and a couple of other discretionary or federally funded projects, rather. We were also able to include it into Lebanon's project and a couple of others associated as well, if I'm not mistaken. The biggest thing is contractors are required to bid the airport projects with significant bituminous hauling and earthwork quantities and hold their prices for extended amount of time. They inflate those prices as a contingency because it's almost like gambling with the market. You don't really know what's going to happen. And as you're aware, those specific commodities goes up and down and becomes volatile by nature. So we developed those special provisions back in 2022 in terms of 109A and 109B. And effectively, one is for bituminous, which is oil, and one is for fuel. Anything that uses fuel, like hauling with a dump truck associated to rock or asphalt, that takes fuel. There will be an adjustment associated to that. Effectively, when utilized appropriately together, there's a significant savings potentially, but more so in the abstract of your bid prices become more stabilized. And that's what we're looking for, is bid price stability more than anything else. It's not intended to be precise. Again, engineers, we love precision and accuracy, but it's not intended to be precise, but it's accurate. It's good enough, and it creates that level playing field that we're looking for across the state of Tennessee. So again, as a recap, basically, it's allow the contractors to bid an uninflated market unit price, which maximizes grant funding, promotes a low-risk environment to the airport sponsor and contractor, and it maximizes the number of bids by minimizing bid uncertainty. We did an analysis of the roadway side, and what we came about is that we expect effectively about 5% is what you'll need to have on hand in terms of amount of monies to pay for potential indexing, if anything. But that also goes with the idea that if you have a lower unit price, you're actually saving money regardless. So with that, what actually enables it that we started this process for the federal side, for which we're technically on hold, is the Reauthorization Act of 2024 allows for that price adjustment. It didn't before. Effectively with that, there's a program guidance letter, programmatic guidance letter called 2505. It's funding and formula changes. There's, of course, the draft of the new 10J that's coming out someday, sometime, I don't know when, but it's coming supposedly. And then there's also the FAA allowing for the submittal of modification of standards for that beforehand, but right now FAA is reviewing it at the headquarters level. For awareness, because it's always confusing to me specifically, you have the ADO, then you have the Southern region, and then you also have headquarters. So they're layered essentially. So with that, this is just how an example, it's a formula and specific line items would qualify for it. It's something that we ended up doing a training. So effectively your consultant will be well-versed on how to handle that. And if not, we have Adam Guy within our house that's honestly been doing this for the last several years. He's not here today. He's actually sick too. Not from me. I double checked. He has a virus. I have an infection. There's two different things. So with that, if you haven't, as a selfish plug, we do office hours. We try to do it once a month. And the idea is to do a little bit deeper dive than we do at Garm's, because if we do a deep dive at Garm's, we'll probably put most of y'all to sleep because there's so much information to go through and how fast I talk. Sorry. So with that, what we ended up doing is we just did land leases in March. Again, we're about to do obstructions. And for this month in May, we just cleared about to be finished with Charles Baker in terms of all of their trees and vegetation. Should be able to get them off of a conditional license. I'll go over some data shortly to show where we're standing in terms of conditional license across the state. It's been a huge achievement, not necessarily aeronautics only. It's everybody here because it's also associated to our AIP projects, or basically the projects that we've been working on for the last 2 or 3 years. It's a combination. So another thing too, as a selfish plug, is we do development updates effectively with that in terms of our state material standards. What does that actually mean? So effectively, after our last year GARMs, we were able to actually introduce TDOT or Tennessee specific materials that we're able to use now on federally funded projects. And this is for anything 60,000 pounds or less. And you'll say, well, we've always been able to use state materials. Only for 30,000 pounds or less. And each project had to require a modification of standard. If it's anything more than 30,000 pounds, we don't have to do that anymore. We have basically a blanket one across the state. So as long as it's 60,000 pounds or less, that's going to be the operating weight. We can go ahead and use the materials and you just do a plug and play, no modification of standard required. Simplifies the entire process. So what this covers basically is the base stone, which is the stone under the asphalt itself, and the glue that holds everything together. We call it prime coat and tack coat. So with that, basically, it utilizes highway mix with FAA materials testing and quality control procedures. We try to remove some of that. They said no. We said okay, but at least we're able to use our highway mix. The biggest thing that is honestly something that's new to aviation is it uses recycled asphalt, specifically in the actual travel lanes themselves, not on the shoulders only. We've been using this now for over, again, 20 plus years, essentially on the roadway side, interstate wise. We don't have problems with that. We have a really clean recycled asphalt process. And that was what the FAA was concerned with. But after seeing the process, they were good with it. They felt comfortable with it. I thought it was kind of funny because 2 years ago at the Washington conference that I went to in terms of the Transportation Research Board, there was some university that was saying, hey, we're really looking into recycled asphalt to be able to use in the actual pavement where the actual aircraft will be transversing. I was like, we've been doing that for 2 decades now. Why is this even a new idea? Anyways, I thought it was kind of funny. But anyways, with that specifically, we developed a structure and also a surface mix. I'll go through that in just a second. We also could build an entire airport based on Tennessee materials, which is huge in terms of availability of materials. You can go ahead and pave. We had a project a couple of years ago that they reached out and said, hey, Christopher, can we actually use that state aviation mix? We were still going through approval. So I said, no, What was happening is they were waiting 3 months for that asphalt to finally be available. And once it was finally available, they had to truck it from basically southern Kentucky all the way into a good sizable distance into Tennessee specifically. Then the question comes, well, how did you keep that asphalt nice and hot? Did you actually have bed warmers in the actual truck, the bed of the truck? Because those are quite expensive to run. Or did you just basically increase the heat to just a crazy amount at the actual asphalt plant to make sure when it finally got to where you were at, that it's still workable? The problem with that is it still looks great when they actually pave it. But the problem is they've actually burnt out all the mineral oils in that asphalt. They call it asphaltenes and multines. It gives the flexibility of the actual asphalt and defines what its cracking nature will be in the future. So what will happen is it'll look just like a brand new desk, but unfortunately this will be like pure wood versus just laminate wood. It will deteriorate faster without you realizing it, and we will not get the associated life cycle out of it. It'll start to crack faster because of that. Think about it basically in terms of someone that just never uses lotion and just continues to go outside. You're having the same effect effectively. So with that, it also creates more opportunities for qualified local contractors that don't have asphalt plants to actually bid on those said projects. Because if you don't have an asphalt plant to produce P401 or to produce any of the FAA mixes, you're taking a little bit of a liability if you don't have the ability to actually get that asphalt within a timely manner associated to that project itself, associated to the deadlines tied to that said project. So these are the actual approvals that we got from the FAA. Got a nice, pretty letter. We almost put that on my fridge, to be honest. And then with that, we also put out a development update with all the links to all the specifications. Again, if you don't know where this is at, contact your project delivery staff member. They'll be able to help you out with that. And then specifically with that, we made it where it's plug and play. You literally take out the FAA portion of the spec, you plug this spec in, you move forward essentially. Simple as that. So I'm going to quickly jump now into asset management. I'm actually doing pretty good in time now. So with that, I have two employees I'm able to introduce. Adam Guy, who's again sick today, virus, not me. Bill Burney specifically as well. He's actually in the back. So if you have any APMM, AWAS, let's see what else, beacons, lighting questions, anything question-wise for maintenance, that's your guy, not this guy, that guy. So effectively, I'm glad to have assistance in that area that will help as I'm trying to remain agile myself. So Adam, what is he actually working on? He is working to help set the standards across the actual teams themselves, as well as figure out where's the actual roadblocks and how do I open those actual roadblocks up to make things flow more appropriately. So effectively setting those standards, setting those performance targets, linking asset condition, ensuring consistency, supports planning, environmental, as well as grants compliance to ensure alignment within the entire division in terms of all the matrix teams. And with that is driving data decisions that we're trying to do across the actual division itself so we can set ourselves up for success, not only for us, but more so for you. And in terms of future funding in terms of a Tennessee Aeronautics Commission or TA, that as well. Bill Burney, what is he in charge with? He is going to be leading the statewide airport maintenance program, and that includes the APMM program, Airfield Pavement and Marking Maintenance Program. With that, automated weather observation systems, AWAS. Obstruction removal program, we specify this is temporary. There is a bigger endeavor that I'm trying to basically roll out, but there's so many little steps that have to come together as part of a critical path. We're working on it. I think you'll like it once we actually get there. But anyways, right now, basically, I'm trying to remove anything that's on a conditional license airport-wise. And also a beacon replacement program, temporary across the state. I'll give you a little bit of an update where we're at on that as well. We're also trying to ensure compliance with the FAA, TDOT, and safety standards. And we also are integrating maintenance priorities into the ACIP and funding decisions, because our biggest thing, and we've had several successes of this year alone, where effectively the airport, instead of replacing the pavement, they're able to do a site design in terms of construction-wise for future hangars and or construct an actual hangar itself with their funding, which is huge in my opinion, other than just replacing pavements. And I don't know about you, but replacing pavements is boring. So the idea behind all of that is if we can maintain it, I'd rather be building something vertical personally. So the topics on hand is, again, APMP, which is the Airport Pavement Management Program. That is your pavement condition index updates effectively. APMM, AWAS, beacon updates, obstructions, and some things that we're working on under development because we have nothing else better to do. So effectively with APMP, every 3 years, we do a pavement evaluation. It's required by the FAA for the airports. It's part of your grant assurances But what we do is try to help out to make that easier for y'all specifically. So instead, we take on that grant assurances from you to help you out, to provide that data. And what has to happen is every 3 years, you have to do this. It doesn't matter how it's funded, just that it's actually completed. We state fund that to make that easier on everybody specifically. So what we do effectively, and we just finished this up, is we actually collected across the entire state of Tennessee, all of the payment data. We're in the process of getting that ready for the ACIP working session, probably more or less as an Excel. And we have some maps that we're developing that will be very, very, I think, honestly, user-friendly by Kimley Horn. It should be coming out later this summer. With that, in terms of PCI, it follows the payment condition index associated to ASTM, American Standard Testing Materials, for airport payments. And then effectively what it comes down to is we're working through to get that finished by the end of this summer. A quick just example showing over at Jackson Regional Airport, we had a PCI excluding the runway because it was under construction at 52. And then we had a PCI after we did maintenance to become a 71. What does that actually mean? If we were to try to replace that payment just traditional wise, it'd be $13.2 million if you want to tackle anything that's under 60 PSI, or 23.6 or anything under 70 PSI. The biggest thing is when you're replacing the asset, yes, it goes back to 100. So there's a little bit heavier or higher of a bump. But the reality, though, is we're able to do that for a fraction of the cost at 1.9 to get it to where it is considered a stable number as 71. Now, if you're looking at it, you're like 71, that's a pretty bad grade, Christopher. You know, high school or college, I don't know about you, but 71 was actually great for me in high school because I was trying to skip class because I actually had a girlfriend who became my wife of 7 kids, essentially. So she was more important to me at the time than school was. Messed up priorities, but hey, it worked out for me in the end. The reality, though, is 71 is actually a good point to target. It just means that things are maintained, things are okay, things are moving forward. If you can get into the 80s, it's even better. The higher you go, at that point, you're basically almost brand new. You can't maintain new. So with that, in terms of what I've been trying to change is PCI. All it means is, hey, take a gander at it. It's probably heavy maintenance, probably needs some preventative maintenance. If you can get the heavy maintenance in terms of patching done, then you can do a seal coat. We're done. We're good. Sometimes if there is a large widespread issue of payment issues, then it becomes a question of whether it's a major rehab or reconstruction. Usually that's where that preliminary study is in terms of engineering is critical. So in terms of what APMM will cover, it covers crack repair, seal coat, remarking, joint repair, patching if it's small relatively, and microsurfacing is what we've been doing across the state for the last couple of years. This was a before and after. And what you'll notice specifically in terms of this 29, again, it just says, hey, take a gander at it. You could probably do some sort of maintenance. And that is 1000% true. What we're having is a lot of cracking. And then we had effectively some raveling from an old seal coat. And again, that is what PCI is supposed to say is go do something here. And we did. And we made that into a 74 afterwards. And we had this evaluated by Applied Payment Technology specifically. This was another one where this just before and after had a little bit of a, I think it was a lightning strike, or maybe it was just because water was ponding there and was creating the issue. We're able to basically fix that. We actually were able to effectively float the paver as well to push the water out. And then we're able to put a micro surface on top of that one. So like JP went over in terms of APMM, preservation is the key. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Several airports completed hangar projects instead of payments due to APMM, which I think is a huge success. And then the other thing too is we invested heavily for the last few years, of which what we're looking at is after that initial heavy investment to get everything where it needs to be, it's now where we can actually maintain it. So it becomes a more maintainable amount of money. I pride myself in the positive sense. So like, hopefully my car doesn't blow up, that my car right now is 271,000 miles on my Volkswagen Jetta. And effectively, I'm continuously putting a little bit of money into it to maintain it because I know I'm going to get 300,000 miles and I know I'm going to get to 350,000 miles. Hopefully it doesn't blow up now. But anyways, regardless, what it comes down to is why buy new when I can stretch it further and go and get something else that I need at my actual household specifically. So if my child needs a vehicle, which we just got, I was able to afford it effectively. So for APMM, in terms of point of contact, you have Bill Burney, and Bill Burney, and Bill Burney. So effectively from there, Bill Burney is a great guy. He's a great guy. So with that, sorry, Bill, I have to say that. No, seriously, the reason why I threw him out there is he's an excellent communicator, coordinator, everything. I have a lot of faith in him. And what I'm trying to do is take this next level, essentially. So with our consultant this year, specifically, it's Garver, it's Kyle Bennett and John Sloan in terms of the CA and RPR. Highlight is Anthony Marizoni, as well as Zeb Provin. So effectively, we had a kickoff meeting where we basically, for 4 hours, we were trying to figure out what does this year's look like for in terms of plan. We spent 2 of those hours just communicating on communication because that's just a constant problem that I just want nipped in the bud. I'm tired of it. I don't know what else to do at this point other than let's figure this out. Let's throw everything out on the table and figure out where the problem lies. So with that, we were trying to figure out who should be contacted who, how should this be flowing, how should information be essentially shared. And what we came to basically was a plan where effectively Bill will be reaching out to you initially. From there, effectively Kyle Bennett with Anthony will be coordinating, hey, when is the possible time that we'll actually be there at your airport? And then when we're actually on your airport specifically, the RPR as well as the superintendent of Highlight will be the ones communicating, given the cell phones, actually also showing you where they're going to be at on the airfield in terms of just a very quick sketch of a phasing plan specifically of where we're going to be impacting. So specifically with that, TDOT will send that introductory email. Garver will then do a kickoff meeting at least 30 days prior. We'll then at that point confirm that everything is good, 14 days out. Schedule can still shift depending on rain, depending on something other randomly things happening. And then the biggest thing is we're scheduling that pre-construction meeting 7 days prior. What we're trying to do differently this year than we did last year was invite the airports to the actual meeting itself to hear from you. What are the problems areas? What are the issues? What are the concerns? We want to try to make sure we're helping you as much as we possibly can. And the biggest thing too is if there's any blackout dates, because you have special events, please tell us because we want to work around your schedule specifically. The biggest thing is Highlight will then communicate afterwards. And then once on site, daily check-ins and checkouts, including work locations and phone numbers. So this is just a proposed list. Doesn't mean we'll tackle it all this year because some things may end up coming recycled to next year. We're doing as much as we possibly can. I have effectively moved things around associated criticality of that asset. So effectively, if the asset's about to fail or there's like a major fault issue, that's heavily prioritized. If it's just effectively, and I mean this in a nice way, if it's just cracks and seal coats, it's probably going to be on the lower spectrum, but I still want to get that done within the next year to 2 years as fast as possible. Depending on the amount of cracks, the severity of cracks in terms of the widths, that also is a big thing for me. For one example, Dixon had a lot of large cracks, so we went ahead and elevated them to top of the list. I'd go ahead and knock them out specifically. And to marry associated up with some of the other projects that they've already done really well on. This is a quote that's actually stayed with my entire career now for the last 13 years. In preparing for battle, I've always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. So I don't know, I came from the side of construction and also maintenance. I don't know how many times we came up with this perfect plan. It's supposed to be just the greatest thing. And you finally get out to the field and it just sucks. It just didn't work out. But because we were going through the process of planning and we went through the process of creating said plan, we were nimble and flexible and agile to make things happen regardless. So we had a plan A, we had a plan B, we had a plan C, and it got down to a plan Z, which basically I think you're just shooting from the hip at that point. But regardless, because we did that planning exercise, we're all thinking, well, who's the point of contact? How do I need to coordinate this? And how do I make this thing happen? So anyways, on AWAS, the point of contact is Bill Burney. So effectively, we just executed a new maintenance contract that John Briggs got us over the winter. And so far, we have 29 that are actually okay in terms of the system. 5 has been repaired since December. I think that actual number has increased since then because I made this slide about a month ago. And with that, we had 11 that were in process of being repaired. There's actually 2 that I'm aware of that actually needs to be replaced regardless of the existing system. I've been actually working through Highlight as well as Sourcewell, and I may be basically in line to go ahead and procure a couple of AWAS systems through the Sourcewell contract. We're trying to get out an actual contract for the new sites, and we're actually working through an asset management approach to replace all of the AWAS systems across the state by different priority levels. Think of it like, hey, the engine's blown up in my car versus, hey, it's leaking oil versus, hey, it's running fine. There's a prioritization to that. And that's what we're trying to do with everything to make sure that we keep the system functioning well versus what it is right now, which is 11 that has issues. Trying to get that to 0. The other thing too is we have 5 new AWAS sites, technically 6 across the state. And effectively with that, we're developing an RFP right now for true new sites. And they're basically, like I said, I have an opportunity for a couple of them that if it's dire need, we can go ahead and replace them now. The other thing too is beacon replacement. And by the way, I just adopted this program, so I'm starting to figure everything out. So if it's something like I say, I don't know, give me a little bit of grace. I just took it over like a month and a half ago. Bill just got it like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So give him a little bit more grace too, but we're gonna work this and we're also gonna make sure we're timely in our answers. So with beacon replacements, we've also done 10 across the state already, and we have 10 more to go effectively. If you're not on this list and effectively you have a beacon that actually is dead, or effectively it is continuously giving you problems, let Bill Burney know so we can put you on a list so we can get that replaced. Going from the typical halogens to LEDs, they're not going to save you money in terms of the bulbs itself. What's going to save you money specifically, and that's not really why we did this, but it's just a kind of additional benefit, is the motor turning the actual beacon itself. So I have a specific friend that told me that it's a legitimate source, and correct me if I'm wrong if you're out there. I didn't want to say your name, but I may just say your name. But it's about $800 a year just on the actual watts that's basically being saved. And all that's because of the amps required to turn that heavy beacon itself. So you think about it, $800 times 15, so times 10, 8,000 plus 4, $12,000 you basically save in a 15-year life cycle just on energy savings alone. The other benefit and the primary benefit that we actually did this for was because, taking his word, because I do trust him a lot, is that, hey, as a pilot, you can see it from a very far distance because it's more of a concentrated beam, less light pollution to your neighbors. So if your beacon has been working, you should get a thumbs up. If your beacon's been dead for many decades, you'll probably get a thumbs down because they're probably not used to having a light on anyways. So just kind of weigh that into as a matter of fact. So this is just some pictures of an installation that was done. It has to be done with a crane typically, and it's usually at the highest point on the airfield. So typically, if I'm lucky, it's on a building. If I am really lucky, it's on a water tower. So effectively with that, on the left-hand side is the old beacon. The right-hand side is the new beacon. And this is just showing it installed. It's kind of cute. It's so small, but it's LED. I don't know. It does a really good job though. Here's the water tower, which I thought was interesting. And this is just it operating at night, which I think is phenomenal. So I thought that was kind of cool. So another item of interest is obstructions. I've been told that, hey, obstructions is fun. And yes, it is fun. Not really. We went from effectively 2022, we had 31 conditional licenses. So effectively 45% of the airports. We're now down to 15 conditional licenses, effectively 22% of the airport now. And we're looking to target by the end of June, a month and a half, to get to 10, essentially 14. I'm trying to drive that number to 0. I know 0 is probably impractical, but by God, I'm gonna get 0. And the reality, though, because of that, is as soon as we get to 0, there's some other changes that we're trying to work on that we can start to work to actually implement, essentially, to work with all the airports and their consultants to make it, I think, a process you will like. So with the obstruction process, it's been a benefit of multiple things. AIP process from the federal programs. If you're doing federal approaches, you guys have been executing for the last 3 to 5 years and been working with us. Super kudos. I know it's a lengthy process, especially with property acquisitions. It's been part of the thing, and we're appreciative of that partnership. The other thing that's a temporary state program that we've been doing, basically it's a conditional licenses. If it's already conditional license, we're interested. If there are federal trees within that state approach, we can cut them as well to make sure that you don't come back to the same property owner more than once, because we heard it. Smart idea. Kudos to that consulting group, because that's something I wasn't thinking about. The reality of it all was effectively with that, all we really need is a right of entry. All that means is just an agreement with the property owner, because you as the airport have good relations with that property owner, and they say you can come on our property and trim the tree and or cut the tree to the base. With that, we were able to go ahead because we have a delegation authority through our TDOT maintenance division, not aeronautics division, but maintenance division, that we're able to leverage that allows TDOT to come in with our own contractors and cut said trees. All that requires is us to get into a maintenance agreement with the state of Tennessee, with the airport authority itself or airport sponsor. And then with that, what we end up doing is, as the contractor's out there cutting trees, we have a registered land surveyor out there confirming. So as soon as we actually get done cutting trees, we know we don't have a conditional licenses anymore. We're good. So to wrap things up, we have a few things under development. What we always try to do, and this is something that JP started with, is we have 1,000 things that we're like, man, that would be nice. But then we're like, let's pick 1% of that. And let's pick the 1% that really will help these airports out, will help the state out, will help the system out. Because ultimately, there's only a finite amount of time every day that we can focus. So we don't need to be effectively distracted. So with that, we did some previous test strips that I talked about many Garms ago that we did at Johnson Toon as well as Lawrenceburg to figure out something different for seal coating. We start seeing the issues with the 608 We wanted to change. We needed some data in order to change because nothing was present and the FAA didn't have anything. So we wanted to figure this out. What can we do? That led us effectively to find other treatments, but I want to take it a step further. We're missing something in between a microsurface and a overlay, or basically just new thick of asphalt that's placed down. We're missing something called basically a double micro or a cape seal. All that means is think about micro times 2. There's a little bit thicker. I'll get to it too as well. And then specifically with a cape seal, all it is don't hold your breath. It's a chip seal. I know it's bad. Chip seal, but it's the micro that goes on top that basically binds it all together. That doesn't create the actual problem itself. What this does is if you have a lot of block cracking in your pavement, and you have that nice little random valleys that it's in the pavement itself, it helps to even all of that out so the water just doesn't sit in that valley, get into the pavement, get under the pavement, and then create structural issues with that asphalt in the future. I'm not going to do this to your airport. So if you see all of this alligator / block cracking, that doesn't mean I'm going to do this from now. Okay, don't. But I thought it was kind of an interesting concept. This at City Hall had a PCI of 38. So obviously it needs to be rehabbed, right? What they ended up doing was doing a double micro where effectively, this is 5 years later, it's a 79 still. And this is 11 years later. So think about it. There's someone that said, if all I have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But if I have more tools in that toolbox, more opportunities arise, I can do things differently. I can think differently. So with that, in addition to that, something else that we're looking into is steel payment adjustment. So with hangars, they're steel, and steel is also another commodity that gets stock traded, essentially. In addition to everything else, it fluctuates up and down. We're trying to figure out, as long as the FAA is good with it, which initially they are, in addition to the fuel and bituminous indexing, more to come, we're looking to develop a steel payment adjustment as well to ensure we stabilize that pricing if there is an uncertainty in the market. We're also looking to create state concrete specifications. We already created the asphalt. I need a concrete version now so I can make it where they can be competitive to each other. And with that, create it to where effectively aligns to ensure we get more readily available materials when needed. The other thing too that I'm curious about is the testing, because typically the actual 10H specifications from the FAA is more designed under the primary airports and then effectively just benefits all the other airports. There's some testing requirements in concrete I don't think it's necessary for general aviation. One of which is during construction, there's a flexural beam test that effectively we're looking to eliminate because compression is really the ultimate thing for concrete that we're really more so concerned about. And that's something that the contractors have been asking about that would help in terms of concrete type projects, just as an example, among other things. So essentially we're looking at that 60,000 pounds or less, possibly can do more. We think we can do more, but it's going to be more so depending on if the FAA is comfortable. And with that specifically, the opportunity is reduce costs, improve constructability, and increase contractor participation. With that, what we're doing is we're doing a side-by-side comparison between TDOT specs as well as the FAA specs. We're identifying those key differences. We're coordinating with different contractors, suppliers, ACPA, TCA, and then with that specifically, identify real-world construction challenges with the FAA specs. With that specifically, we're also partnering up with MTSU to actually go ahead and do all the concrete testing ahead of advance so that we have data that we can rely on, because that was critical in order to get the state aviation mix approved with the FAA is we provided data results from Lipscomb University. And with that, what it comes down to is it helps us draft, review, refine, finalize, and actually push it out in terms of getting it approved by the FAA like we did with the state aviation mix. Other notable things of which to funnel out, basically just to know that I haven't forgotten about it. It was talked about at last year's Garms, but reimagining life cycle cost analysis with the idea of data counters. Because in my mind, if there's a lot of traffic coming down on that runway, more than likely what needs to happen essentially is maybe it's a question or comment about whether or not this should be concrete runway, because there's an economic loss whenever that runway is shut down to put down yet more asphalt essentially. And I'm trying to look into that because there's something more that can be done with data counters since we have all of that information to make it better for everybody. With that also, the average unit cost database, we're still developing that. We're coming down to the last bits. We're able to go ahead and launch that. Ideally, it helps to know what real prices are coming in at. So as you're estimating it, you can use our database in addition to your database to make you feel comfortable whether or not you think that the actual unit cost is correct or not. We're also working on that geo database like I talked about beforehand last year. We're actually looking to be done by the end of this calendar year in terms of final deliverable, in terms of all the assets created into essentially a GIS platform. CAD standardization is something that we started on. I'm looking to standardize CAD. And the reason behind all that is it makes the reviewing process as well as a contractor process simplified. Because every time you look at a set of plans, if it's different from a different consulting firm, it's going to take some time to actually consume. And effectively with that, it makes everybody less efficient, especially contractors as well. We're actually working on a standard drawings library to make it accessible for everybody, as well as some other dashboards that we can make it better for everybody to coordinate. So with that specifically, and I know I probably talked fast, but I was trying to make sure I get us out at 12, but it's 12:02, so you got to forgive me. But I really do appreciate everybody. This has been a coordinated effort. Effectively, what it comes down to is we're trying to do a lot of things within a narrow amount of time to make this better for everybody, to make this more collaborative, to make sure that effectively we take care of these airports across the state as part of a team member, a part of a line of business. So specifically, there should be on your desk right now a more or less this key takeaways, as well as ACIP review checklist. So essentially just more or less some high points of what we covered today. If you do have any questions specifically, I don't know if we have time for questions. Are we doing questions still? Okay, she says we're doing questions. We'll do questions then. I'm here as well as the rest of the team. Questions? Yes, sir. Yes, that is. So if you go to TASP 2040, if you Google it, it'll bring you up to a website. If you access that website, I got asked to actually get that renamed. If you go to hangar rates and charges, the land lease is actually built into that. We just probably need to rename that. Yes, if you click on that, it'll open up to another web page, and it actually has land lease on that landing page. Apologies for being a little confusing. Yes, sir.
Discussion point after the obstructions are removed.
Ooh, yes, sir. That is a great point. So Evan Lester did a RAM tool presentation that's actually on office hours. So in theory, once the actual trees are cut down, if it was part of a larger federal scope, we still need the airport to help us out because we can't remove those in the database because we don't have access to RAM associated with your airport. So it's something that I'm going to be pressing for our project delivery team to work with you to get that essentially resolved. All that really takes, and Evan did a really good job in the presentation of that, is basically just submitting photos essentially of those trees being cut and or the actual survey results that we have. So really good question specifically. That is something that's probably going to be coming down in the near future from the FAA. I think they're probably trying to put out other issues at the moment. So it's probably a little bit low on their list. Great point. He did record that. So if you haven't seen it, watch that. It's on the office hours. Everything's pre-recorded in addition to live technically. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Two questions. One for you, Christopher. Your state materials initiative, is that going to be impacted by the airport regulatory reduction?
I have no idea what that is. What is that?
I have to go back and look. It passed the House 2 months ago.
Okay.
And it's basically designed to do exactly what you're doing. They passed this act for permission to use state aviation mixes across the country, and the FAA is in their court now. They have to respond.
Okay.
I don't know if you heard anything about that.
I haven't, but ours went all the way through to FAA headquarters, as well as all the lines of businesses, all the way up to the highest person that I don't really understand their name. But essentially, it was Anthony Cochran, Jeff Crislip, and all of them that was involved with it. So they're going to be the ones that are going to be associated to that too. I can check with them to double check, but it shouldn't affect us if the idea that it's going to make it easier, I'm assuming.
I didn't know if it was going to be like a complete, one standard nationwide, or each state was going to be able to.
My understanding, I shouldn't say that. I'll have to look into that because if it was trying to make one standard, it'd be very foolish. Because that's what led us into the issue that we're at right now, specifically just general aviation airports. I can see it for commercial airports because you want that one standard, but just like when you make one standard to compass everything, there's so many variability. And with asphalt, it's always going to be the climate. The different climates will be different performance grades.
When you look at it, it looks like it mimics a lot of what 90, 100,000 pound. So I just didn't know if you heard.
No, that hasn't been.
Airport regulatory reduction.
Okay, I'll double check on that.
Second question I have, and John Briggs, I apologize. I know you and I talked about this a couple months ago at length, but it's not necessarily for you.
Dave.
You were the person who answered the phone. Is TDOT Aero able, willing to discuss the airport authority bill? Who that's actually going to apply?
Yeah.
So it seems to know who it's actually applying to, and there are at least 2 or 3 in this room that it could potentially.
Right. So we don't, we'll say we don't have the latest and greatest information. I may be even a little bit behind, John, I don't know if you got anything new. So there were versions of the bill that were introduced. There were amendments that changed some of the language, and that's where I'm a little gray on where it stands right now. So the initial versions of the bill were only applied to communities that exceeded a certain population threshold, and that was 900,000 people. So it was basically your metropolitan areas. But then there was another piece to it that included basically tri-cities. So it still was your 5, kind of targeted your 5 primary airports. There's potential that the population number was removed. If so, or maybe reduced. If so, then it could impact more airports. So, Wayne, do you have? I know we discussed a little bit within the TAC, and that's where I'm a little bit behind on emails and reading and so.
Yeah, I reached out to Mike Marsh. Mike is one of the commission members and is attorney in Memphis. And what Mike sent to me is there apparently is state legislation for 3 types of airport authorities. One is a metro airport authority, where you have over 100,000 in the city, or a county with a city. The other one is regional airport authorities, where you have multiple municipalities. And a third one is municipal airport authorities. The amendment that JP and I looked at only affected the metro and the regional airport authorities, did not reach down into the municipal. Now, we were pulling it off the legislative website. Wasn't signed, not sure that is the final wording, but my expectation would only be regional, tri-cities, and the metro ones, which would be the other.
Yeah, thank you, Wayne. So we have a legislative liaison who's tracking that. I think maybe this week or next is when we should see final resolution, public chapters come out from what was passed and signed by the governor. So the last I heard, I think a lot of bills were on the governor's desk, and there's potential he may not, sign and pass something. So I have to go back to my Schoolhouse Rock days about how all this works, but yeah, so it's still pending. Yeah, good question there. So,
Just a quick comment.
Yeah.
As far as that bill goes, and I think Wayne, you covered exactly what that is. I haven't seen the final report and final billboarding yet, but what we recommend as far as TAA goes is the airports to go back and look at their, the corporation with the Secretary of State, when your airport was created, whenever it was created. Go look at that letter because it will say how you were created, if you were metro, regional, or municipal. And for metro and regional, I think this bill would certainly have some impacts to this. But that is the important document. You got to go and check how you were registered with the Secretary of State and look at the worship thing. Recommend everything that.
and I believe there was language to further identify the regional airports. I think you had to be regional and have joint participating municipality, not part of the state. So that was the criteria. That's like, okay, this is just Tri-Cities because Bristol, Virginia. I don't think Chattanooga. Well, Chattanooga would be under the population size and not. I don't know if they have anybody from Georgia that serves. Hopefully it's just the big 5. But if we find out it's more than that, we're definitely going to send out. I mean, you'll probably get a call or find out before we can reach out to you. But yeah, we'll stay engaged on it. Any other questions? And be mindful of everybody's time. Thank you all again for coming here today. I wanted to give another special thank you to our host airport, Murfreesboro Municipal Airport, Chad and your team. I know you're throwing the party, so you got to clean up afterwards and all that. And it ends up being a lot of work, but we got a little something for you. So it's an autographed propeller here, custom.
Oh, nice.
The whole team signed it. It's going to be worth some money one day. Hang on to that.
Is the rest on the ramp?
That's not airworthy.
Oh, okay.
Don't use it. Just for decoration.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, thank you so much. All right. Well, I hope all of you have safe travels back to wherever you came from. Thank you again for joining today. Reach out if you have any questions.